What is going on? Ada Nation, welcome to Dap Central. I'm your host here for Reed, and in today's live stream, we're going to be breaking down all of the latest news and highlights going on in the broader crypto and blockchain space. And then, of course, we're going to touch on Cardano as well. Now, for today's live stream, I've got an awesome guest that is going to be Trim Brusette, who's been on here a couple of times. So without any further ado, let me go ahead and bring him up. Trim, welcome back.
Hey guys, thank you. I'm glad to be back. It's been a while.
It sure has. Yeah, so much has changed in the last couple of months. I know definitely on your end, we've also had a couple of really cool events, which you and I were able to touch base, I believe, at least two of them, right? So we were able to touch base Rare Evo. I'm not sure that we saw each other in Vegas for NFTLV, but I know I definitely just...
No, I wasn't there. Unfortunately, I had to go back from the States. But we did meet in Dubai, however briefly. I was hoping to get some more time, but it is what it is at these events. We did get a lot of to chat a lot in Rare Evo, though. That was great.
Yeah, we actually got to create some content there together. But anywho, I want to just say thank you for joining me back here. You always provide a ton of insight and a lot of technical knowledge that I personally don't have. So I always cherish having you on here on the channel to break down all these highlights. Now, today we're going to be doing things a little bit differently. Normally, we focus strictly just on Cardano. I kind of want to just expand the conversation to touch on just the entire blockchain space, right? So there's been a ton of news coming out of just the macro markets. There's been a lot of positivity within Bitcoin. And then there's also been some wins as well as some recent controversies within Ethereum as well, right? Now, last but not least, Cardano's been thriving on its own. We've got a lot of builders, a lot of projects, which I normally break down. So we're going to save that portion for last. But because I have you here, Trim, as a guest, I maybe just want to kick things off with just a little bit of the macro news. We're going to dive into some articles, and then we'll kind of pivot and take some comments from the community as well. So how does that sound, you, Trim?
Yeah, sounds great.
All right, let's go ahead and just quickly jump into the comments here. We've got Dre tuning in. We've got Chuck Lemaine. We've got Eric. What is up, everybody? Thank you all for tuning in. We've got Stefan, Mark Byers, and Raul. He's joining us from Australia. I believe him and Mark both.
Wow, it's
8 a.m. in the morning.
Either very early or very late for you guys, right?
Yeah, it seems like they are a whole day ahead of us and they're still able to join us here. So big shout out to you guys. I definitely appreciate you guys tuning in here to get all the latest content, all the latest news here going on. Like I said, not just within Cardano, but within the broader crypto space. What is going on there, Eric? So as a part of today's live stream, we're going to kick things off with just some of the macro stories. Of course, I think one of the biggest ones that's been in the headlines lately is going to be surrounding CZ, or the founder of the Binance exchange, arguably, I believe, number one, actually. So not even an argument. They're just number one in that particular space. And we've also got, of course, Coinbase and Kraken, which are all also having some of their own news pieces. But let's dive into Binance first. Following that, I want to touch very briefly on Grayscale and, of course, the ETF news. That's been a huge narrative here. Hopefully, we get some closure to that in the very beginning of January. But I believe that the deadline runs all the way up until January 23rd-ish. Now, following that, there's a pretty cool article surrounding Circle, which has now launched what they call a standardized version of USDC, or their dollar-pegged stablecoin. So I want to touch on what that could produce into Cardano if we're able to get that here in this ecosystem, and then some other platforms that have also brought on additional liquidity through stablecoins, i.e. through the on-chain bridge. Now, following that, I do want to jump into some recent articles from Cardano community members, talking about what they expect in terms of just Bitcoin and the next upcoming cycles. And then we're going to jump over into Ethereum. There's been a little bit of news or some videos popping up all over Twitter. I'm sure you've seen them yourself on Trim, and I'm kind of excited.
I've been tagged in a couple of tweets as well.
Yeah, so I want to get your technical perspective on that. I'm excited for that piece there. And then once we wrap up things with Ethereum, we're going to pivot back over into Cardano, where we'll take a look at some of the top gainers and losers. And then there's just a whole list of updates there, touching from MintSwap to Indigo to World Mobile to Rare Evo to TeddySwap, as well as OrcFact. So if you guys are ready for this jam-packed episode, as always, I definitely appreciate it if you guys can give us a thumbs up. It really does help out with the algorithm and also helps to get this content out to other members within the growing Cardano community. So that said, let's go ahead and jump right on into the Binance news. So I think
Mm.
at this point, everybody's kind of familiar with what has happened. But for anybody who really has just kind of been living maybe under a rock, we now have CZ who has pled guilty. I believe this was done a couple of days ago in Seattle. And this was due to them not necessarily adhering to the USA's KYC and AML laws. So this is a completely different situation than what we've seen with FTX, where they were actually manipulating markets as well as mismanaging users' funds. So I want to just kind of kick this off by stating that particular fact. But this was a huge bombshell as we were getting a lot of FOMO, I would say, within the market. What's interesting is that we saw a brief pullback with Bitcoin, and then about a day later, the price just literally pumped right back to where it was. I recall back when FTX had crashed, and we were at about, I want to say, 20,000 ish, and we dropped for over a week once the FTX bombshell came out. And I think that really kind of solidified the bear market low. So to just see how quickly the sentiment has changed and how little of an impact the news surrounding Binance has had was really eye-opening for me. Now, I want to just quickly highlight a few pieces here, and then Trim, I'll turn it over to you to kind of get your initial thoughts as to what you think might be in store, not only for Binance, but just for the broader crypto and blockchain community, now that we have one of the pioneers kind of sitting on the sideline for a minimum of at least 3 years. So it states here, imagine building a company from 15 million right through an ICO to an impressive 60 billion empire. Yes, that's billion with a B. That's exactly what CZ or Changpeng Zhao has done with Binance since he founded the crypto exchange in 2017 before resigning on November the settlement with the United States Department of Justice, or DOJ. What was interesting for anybody who missed this was that they actually had a live press conference on YouTube, which is kind of becoming the norm, right? With some of these bigger departments actually having live streams to break all of this news. It's crazy to think about that because, again, I come from an era where we used to get a lot of news directly from the TV or from the newspaper, but now you have departments like the DOJ actually breaking that kind of stuff on YouTube. So go ahead and check out that live stream. I think it was about 15 to 20 minutes long, super insightful. They break down exactly everything that Binance was charged with. And then again, some of the regulatory penalties that they're going to be facing over the next couple of years. Now, the US has also targeted Kraken, and I released a fully dedicated video breaking this down as well. So Kraken is the third largest exchange, only to Binance, who's number one, and then Coinbase, who's number two. Now, this was the second time that the SEC has actually targeted Kraken. The first time was for them providing staking as a service, which I believe Binance as well as Coinbase also provide. So I'm kind of curious as to why they didn't get pinned with that particular charge. But we did see Kraken settle for $30 million back in February. Now, that is peanuts compared to the $4 billion that Binance had to pay over to the DOJ for their infraction. So it was really interesting to just kind of see the discrepancy there in terms of the settlement amounts. But we now have the SEC coming back for a second stab at Kraken. So I believe that they did release a statement saying that they are planning to fight this one. I know that they kind of didn't really fight too hard. And I'm not sure if that's just because they don't have the legal representation or just the financials to kind of fight these allegations. But we definitely did see that Brian Armstrong from Coinbase was very vocal about fighting back against their charges. So it's really good to see Jesse Powell standing up for himself the second time around, now that the SEC has come back. And now they're actually alleging that they were acting as a unregistered securities broker, dealer, and exchange. So pinning the same exact charges that we saw with Coinbase and Binance early on. Now, that said, Trim, I want to turn it over to you. You know, that is a bit of information there, not only surrounding Binance, but Kraken as well. You know, so it seems like out of nowhere, right? Because again, Kraken was charged initially back in February. You know, 9 months later, they get hit with another lawsuit. But then within the same exact time frame, we also see Binance hit with another lawsuit. And then, of course, we saw SBF being found guilty about a month ago. So within the last month or two, we've seen quite a bit of action surrounding exchanges and just regulations. What are your initial thoughts, and what do you think could be the case here?
So it's a crazy situation, man. It's to me, you know, this is a pretty clear extension of, you know, this whole choke. What is it called? Operation Choke Point 2.0. You know, the unfortunate part is that there's a reason it's called 2.0, because they did this, you know, a similar thing before. And I think it's pure extension of that. What's happening now? I'm kind of curious to see, to understand a little bit more on, or maybe even just imagine what is their strategy like, because some of these things seem unwinnable, right? Like the Kraken lawsuit, they're going to be punching against that. They've lost lawsuits recently. By they, I mean the SEC. So it's a bit of a strange sort of situation where it seems like they're trying to rule, through regulation, through enforcement, rather than information, but only apply the laws to some actors in the space, not to others. In the I believe it was the Kraken litigation. Now they mentioned Cardano and ADA 36 times or whatever it was, and not Ethereum a single time. To me, it seems like they're playing some sort of game, but it's kind of hard to tell exactly what it is that they're doing, right? But they're definitely trying to target the biggest entry points into the crypto space. As you said, with Binance, they got CZ to step down now, sort of fall on the sword for this case, and they've hit Coinbase earlier this year and Kraken now. It is. I don't know. I'm amazed that they can keep doing this. Basically, that's sort of what I'm sort of taking from this. And I've seen some of the, I'm not from the US. I don't live in the US, so this is only sort of news that have reached me through other means. But I've seen politicians in the US already talking about trying to rein in the SEC's sort of rule of terror, right? So it's becoming sort of a political talking point, and I think a lot of people are fed up with this approach. It's really it's brutish. I would say it's a strange way of acting from sort of a governmental regulatory body, right?
Yeah, and what's interesting, kind of maybe pivoting back to a comment that you made earlier about the Kraken lawsuit, I was digging through there, and I think there's just been so much coverage from other creators as well. As you mentioned, Cardano named explicitly multiple times. One thing that I found to be really interesting was the attention to detail. So they also even took quotes from Charles Hoskinson himself when he had talked about Cardano hitting, I believe it was like $1 trillion market cap. And they had references to his AMAs as well, right? So one thing that this has really opened up to myself is the fact are now really looking at everything through some sort of microscope, like even to the point where they're going back and reviewing or rewatching these live streams. So again, I'm not sure what their intent is here, but there's definitely been a lot of speculation that this is all being done in order to cleanse the space in preparation for that ETF approval in early January. So there was that pocket of time where the approval could have taken place. I believe that was during the first or second week of November. Obviously, that didn't happen. And so the next window opens up in the beginning of January, or right as 2024 kicks off. Now, that said, that's going to take us straight into the second story here, which is the fact that following the demise of Binance, right? Now, granted, they're still operating, but the demise and the downfall of, I should say, CZ, not necessarily Binance, we have Grayscale BlackRock meeting with the SEC to discuss their spot Bitcoin ETF. So it states here, Grayscale met with SEC officials on November 20th regarding a rule change to list the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, in addition to an agreement with BNY Mellon to act as a transfer agency and service provider. So this literally sounds like two buddies, kind of in cahoots, teaming up, reaching out to the SEC, which is obviously run by Gary Gensler. And obviously, the public sentiment, at least from the crypto community, is that like he's not on our side, right? So for him to meet up with some of these other big names that have the money, right, and have the leverage is really interesting. So again, I think there's a lot of speculation that this is all going according to their plan, which is to clean up the space, number one. But then also, I personally believe, give some of the market share to United States-based exchanges, for example, like we have with Coinbase. So as I mentioned earlier, Coinbase is second to Binance. And Binance operates mainly outside the US. They did have a US arm that was actually shut down, I believe, not too long ago, given the allegations. But this, I think, is a perfect segue for Black BlackRock, Grayscale, and all of these other fund managers to, again, collaborate with the biggest US based exchange in order to make sure that they kind of control the liquidity and they just control the narrative surrounding crypto, at least once they make it in. And so, again, I think that this has just been somewhat of a cleanup act. But I want to read this last sentence here and then again turn it back over to you, Trim, to see if you have any questions or comments. So, BlackRock's representatives met with the SEC on the same day, detailing how the firm could use an in-kind or in-cash redemption model for its iShares Bitcoin trust. Lastly, in October, the SEC also met with representatives from Hashdex, another company seeking approval to launch a spot Bitcoin ETF. I think we're up to at least 13 or 14 of them now, right? Which would hopefully be approved all at the same exact time to give everybody a fair playing field. But let me turn it back over to you, Trim. What are your thoughts surrounding this here? And just again, the timing of it all.
So, I mean, we've seen so many of these applications, right? Like this is not by any means the first Bitcoin ETF application that's been submitted. A lot of them have been rejected for, various reasons, but I do think, the backing by BlackRock, which, to those who are not familiar with BlackRock, it's like by far one of the biggest investment firms in the world, right? They hold a tremendous influence in the world economy at large, and especially in the US. I don't think they would hitch their horse to such a product or such an application if they didn't think that this would go through this time. So, I think this is interesting. It seems promising that some big players are actually backing this. I do believe that Grayscale already have some sort of exchange traded products for exposure to different kinds of cryptos. I've at least I've heard about stuff like Ethereum Classic, Grayscale products and such. The thing that sort of doesn't quite ring true with me is this whole shtick of not your keys, not your coins. A lot of these exchange traded products are not redeemable, right? So you touched upon this notion of in kind or in cash redemption, which is well, why not make it redeemable, right? So if you're purchasing Bitcoin through now you're using sort of more established and regular exchanges instead of these crypto specific exchanges to buy these things, you should be able to withdraw them, right? Like set up your own wallet and regain custody of this thing. But that it doesn't seem to me that that's sort of the going to be an available thing, which kind of puts into question, I don't know, the whole point of it, at least in my book, right?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point that you make. I'll be quite frank and honest here. I am no expert when it comes to exactly how these ETFs operate. All I personally know is that it's hopefully going to bring a lot more liquidity. And I believe that everything will actually be settled utilizing Bitcoin as opposed to how futures are currently managed, where everything is settled in cash. So, really interesting point that you make there. And if maybe anybody in the comments has any idea as to exactly how that will work, I'm more than happy to go ahead and kind of share that comment here with the general community. Now, let's take a couple of questions here before we move along and touch very briefly on Circle and USDC. We've got a pretty cool comment here. Trim sounds Norwegian. Trim, you want to confirm or deny?
I can confirm that I am actually Norwegian. I live in Oslo.
So, Dre, good job there on catching Trim's accent. We've got fun pants. No good shows like this on Twitch or Kick. Thank you very much. We definitely do appreciate it. If you do find this content to be helpful, make sure to smash that like button and also go ahead and share that here with other members in the Cardano community. We've got AJ stating Endcoins is heating up. Yes, they are. They are going to be launching on the mainnet very soon. I believe that's taking place on November 30th. And in anticipation of that, I have been given, I should say, some Endcoins that I'll be giving away here, I believe, on Twitter. So if you guys are not already following me on Twitter, definitely make sure to go ahead and do so. I'll go ahead and leave that down below in today's description. And also make sure to follow Trim on Twitter as well. The link to his particular profile, or X, I should say, is also down there in the description. We've got Frank. Hey, Fareed, did you check out Cardano GPT? I have not, Frank, but I have seen a video highlighting its release. I believe it's actually been out for quite a bit of time. Trim, anything you want to maybe add here?
Who's operating that? Because I saw the news on, I believe it was 2 Minute Papers put out a new video about this ChatGPT feature where you can sort of give it a specific training set and make it more of a subject matter expert on a certain thing, and you could sort of host that as a service. So, basically like a chatbot. So if you have a company, you could sort of try and replace your customer support with something like that, right? And I thought, it would be so cool to make something like this for Cardano, because there's so much research, so much complexity, so many moving parts and things. It would be great to have this kind of chatbot to talk to and sort of explore the space. And someone's made that. That's great. Do you know more about that? Sort of who's hosting it, or what it's
I
about?
personally don't. I personally don't. But Frank, if you do know, definitely make sure to go ahead and share that down in the comments below. What I will say here, though, is I do know some other developers that have been building what they call companion applications. So Crypto Crow, who's a content creator, I think everybody probably watching this already knows Crypto Crow. He's, I believe, running a platform called Eternalize AI, which basically takes in some of these data points, right, which include articles, videos, etc., and they're able to actually build out some sort of AI type language model based off of that information that's fed into it, right? So you can then essentially interact with somebody that's been built through AI. So I know Crypto Crow was talking about, for example, Charles Hoskinson through AI,
Yeah.
right? So feeding,
Yeah, I can.
all of Charles's talks and papers through AI. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I've seen some of these websites where they've actually indexed his live streams and
Mhm.
AMAs, and you can sort of search for keywords like okay, which videos he talked about partner chains or tiered fees or anything like this, and you can find the exact video, the exact timestamp, and go back and watch it or read the transcript. It's actually great, and it fits so well with something like a large language model, right? Where you just like, okay, this is the stuff that he said. Let me sort of query this information through natural language. It's amazing. It's so cool that you can do these kinds of things now.
Yeah, it's super impressive, right? So I mean, I kind of treat it like Google. When you go to Google and you want something answered super quickly, you just type it in and it does all the data aggregation and all the data manipulation for you, and just spits out the answer, right? So to be able to ask Charles, quote unquote, any sort of question and be able to get the facts based off of hundreds of white papers without you necessarily having to dig through it, I think is a huge benefit to the space. Now, the very last thing I wanted to just say here was that again, there's other people building companion apps. So what I'm interested to see is exactly how that compares to Cardano GPT. For example, I know that there's Hydrex, who is a node operator from the World Mobile community, who's also done a very similar thing, feeding the open AI language learning model, hundreds of papers and hundreds of pieces of documentation from World Mobile to where they now have a specific GPT instance solely focusing on data around World Mobile. So I think this is, again, just the very beginning. Seems like a lot of people in the comments are also super bullish on AI. We've got Esco here saying AI is heating up next year, and that could potentially be the next new narrative, right? So I know when I came in back in 2021, the narrative was metaverses, right? Where everybody was buying up land, everybody was talking about building a game, and I realized, after a couple of months, like this stuff is going to take years. So I think just as a word of caution here for anybody who's looking into AI, take that with a grain of salt. A lot of this will not happen overnight, even though a lot of these projects that are going to be coming out the woodworks will act as if that is.
Okay, just to confirm, it wasn't my computer that was acting up. I was just checking. Turns out Farid's computer shut down randomly, so he's booting up and rejoining in a sec. But yeah, one of the things AI is heating up next year for sure. It has been heating up for a while though. Like if you look at it, AI has been, as a discipline, is basically one of the oldest disciplines of computer science. So it's been around for literally decades, right? And there's so much innovation, so many cool things. But these large language models like ChatGPT and Bard and these other ones, they're so fun to play with. It's finally it's not just research papers and these neural nets. It's something that you can sort of play with and have a conversation with. Like it feels much more interactive for everyday people, which is sort of makes it seem much more progressed. And he's back. Hey.
Boy, oh boy, don't you love technology. My off in the middle of the stream. This is, I think, a huge positive right here for StreamYard, because under normal circumstances, that would have actually shut down the entire stream. So because we're doing this all in the cloud, I probably just look like that dropped off on your guys' end, but my computer literally turned off. It's never done that before, and I'm super surprised. So I'm trying to fire everything back up here. But my last comment surrounding AI was just that, just to do due diligence. And again, as new narratives come around, you want to just be careful. So Trim, thank you for keeping the conversation going there for the viewers. I definitely do apologize. I didn't expect that by any means. So I'm trying to pull everything back up here. Let's take a couple more questions, and then we're going to move into the next piece, which is going to be surrounding USDC. All right. So we've got, let's see here, Dre again. Guess you have to go on with the show, Trim. Again, I definitely do appreciate that. Eric, I apologize. That was not an issue on your end, just on mine. And then we've got some other questions here. Let's see here. Okay, I think that should be it for now. Go ahead. Did you have something you want to say?
Yeah, no, I recognize some of these comments. The Stingray one is because we after Ray Rebo, Matt, the Zork man, and we went to the aquarium in Denver, and they had like this little petting pond thing with stingrays, and I got to feed them, and I'm a big lover of animals. I work with horses, and on a daily basis, and this opportunity to pet them and also have them sort of swim up to you, feed them, like I don't know, they're amazing animals. I actually really love them.
Yeah, I didn't realize that you basically take care of horses, like you mentioned, right? So Trim definitely does have a soft spot. He is technical, right? But he can definitely also get his hands dirty. So I can definitely appreciate that in you. All right, let's keep the conversation moving. Let's jump back into this article here. So the next piece I want to jump into is going to be a piece talking about USDC, which I personally think could actually bring a ton of liquidity here. We've already seen USDC and USDT, arguably the two biggest stable coins, brought into Cardano via the on-chain bridge. But this piece is going to be talking about the fact that Circle is now launching what they call their bridged USDC standard for deploying to new networks. So the new bridged USDC standard allows developers to launch the token through a two-phase process, enabling the launch of an unofficial bridged version of USDC that can later become native and official. One thing that I'm taking away from this, it's almost kind of like a trial period, right? Where you could potentially adopt the standard. And again, it wouldn't necessarily be native, but if you wanted to quote unquote upgrade utilizing the standard, you could do so later down the lines. So what I'm curious as to kind of finding out more about is whether or not on-chain will be taking advantage of this. And then also a little bit about the pricing, right? That it would actually take in order to get this into a brand new ecosystem. I know that Charles has mentioned in prior AMAs and Twitter spaces that USDC or Circle is, I think, asking for a 10-figure amount, right, to integrate into Cardano. Now, that could be anywhere between 10 million all the way to 99 million. If we just err on the lower end, that's still quite a bit to come from the, I believe, Cardano Treasury, IOG, CF, Remergo, or maybe all 4 or 5 people together to get USDC on Cardano. Now, just some quick facts here. And again, I did lose my notepad, so I apologize as a result of that shutdown. I believe that USDC has a market cap of around $35 billion. And just alone in the last 24 hours, they had over 3.5 billion in terms of trading volume. So this particular asset is being used across not just Ethereum, but some of the biggest networks all around, including Tron as well. So I think when it comes to that, this could be a huge opportunity for Cardano. And again, there's just been, I think, a need for stable coins. Obviously, we've got Jet, we've got IUSD, which we'll jump into that in just a moment. And then we're also expecting Mahen to launch on December 19th. Now, in closing of this particular blurb here, according to the company, the standard is expected to eliminate the need for migrations where users must swap an unofficial version of USDC for an official version after it becomes available. So again, it looks like they've really simplified the process of onboarding or migrating for anybody who maybe just wants to have the unofficial version, but then says, hey, we're going to go all in and we want the full support. And therefore, there's no additional work that needs to be done utilizing this brand new bridging standard. So I know that in Cardano right now, as it stands, we've got, I think, $25 million worth of stablecoin liquidity. Hopefully, we get even more with the launch of the Mahen stablecoin. But Trim, what are your thoughts surrounding USDC and just the Cardano ecosystem adopting the largest, right, by market cap in terms of stable coins and onboarding them into the Cardano ecosystem?
So I think the approach that they're taking is interesting. It's pretty useful, right? And it's a kind of result of their success and sort of their place in the ecosystem. Because at this point, there are so many chains, right? And there are so many standards, so many, ledger models, so many different things sort of out there that all want USDC. And their approach of sort of saying, hey guys, if you follow these rules, we might make this coin the official USDC coin, right, on your chain. So that's the idea, right? They're setting up a rule set like, okay, if you implement something that has all of these things, then we can later down the line sort of say that, okay, this is the official coin here. It's an interesting way of sort of expanding their scope without having to do any of the work themselves, which is good, because maybe this this whatever the figure is to come to Cardano could be lower if someone made something like that on Cardano and they just had to sort of approve it, right? Like say, okay, this checks out. It might be a much cheaper and simpler process for them because they wouldn't have to do all the development. My question or sort of concern, because I haven't looked into the actual list of requirements, but I can assume, I can imagine that some of these might be from a regulatory point of view, like the ability to blacklist or freeze assets, these kinds of things that you're pretty easy to implement in ERC20 tokens or sort of these account-based ledger models, but it's practically impossible in UTXO. There may be some way to do it with SIP68 tokens or something like this, but I think it's going to be a much harder process to get there. So I'm not sure sort of how achievable these criteria are. I would have to look into what the criteria actually are and sort of how how realistic it is to satisfy that. But that would have been an interesting read actually. But getting USDC and sort of all the associated liquidity into the ecosystem is good. I think we have pretty decent stable coins already, especially when we have a fiat backed one as well coming with Mahen. USDA was also in the process but delayed. So I think once we have that case, then we have synthetic assets, algorithmically backed, and fiat stable coins, and that should cover most of the requirements in terms of stable coins. So do we need USDC? Would it be great? For sure, 100%. Do we need it? I don't know. It's
I mean, I don't want to interrupt you, but I mean, I definitely think anything that we can get our hands on to bring more liquidity is great, but not at the expense of the core beliefs and core values of the community. And I think that is actually one of the pieces that you hit on there earlier, which is the ability to blacklist assets and then potentially freeze assets as well, right? So I think that's been the biggest point of contention. Obviously, the 10-figure or the 10-digit price tag is also a big point of contention. But if there is some way to simplify that potentially with this brand new bridging standard, it might be a good idea to maybe kick off without the full integration, but to have the unofficial asset. And then, hey, if it does well, going and potentially quote unquote upgrading. Again, I'm just super simplifying it here to then have it as a native asset on Cardano. Again, I think the opportunities here could be potentially endless. Now, I want to touch on two separate things. Let's maybe just kind of wrap up the conversation here surrounding USDC, but then I also want to talk about the fact that IOG has actually also spun up their own venture to deal with stablecoins as well, right? So let me go ahead and share this again. And again, this is just me confirming what I mentioned there earlier. So obviously it's pegged to $1. In terms of the real volume, we've got here around $20 billion. And then if I scroll down, we've got the circulating market cap at around $24 billion. So when we compare that to, I believe, the 30, maybe 40 million dollar market cap at the most that we have within Cardano, these numbers dwarf what we have in Cardano. So even just a sliver of what they're getting in terms of trading volume and just market cap, I think could be a really big opportunity for Cardano. And it's a two-way street as well, right? This also incentivizes people that hold USDC to then come into Cardano to see, how can I utilize this USDC to have it work for me, whether that's supplying it as an asset to a protocol in order to earn some yield, or just, to leverage that and borrow against other things. I think there's just so many different ways to utilize a stable coin within the DeFi space, especially right now as we're getting platform, for example, like Liquid. We're hopefully getting Meld soon. There's Slack Finance and just Len5 V2 coming along. There's going to be a lot of new use cases for these stable coins, and I think adding USDC could be a huge benefit. Now, to close out my point here, and I'll turn it back over to you, Trim, we saw this article coming out on October 22nd. So again, interesting timing when it comes to stablecoins. So we've got Sean Ford as well as David Markley, who I believe both had some pretty big backgrounds, right, at Algorand, coming along and being hired by IOG for a specific stablecoin venture. So it seems like Charles and the IOG team is aware that we do definitely need to have a focus around stablecoins, but we haven't heard much since then about exactly what kind of assets or commodities they're going to be looking to back or peg as stablecoins. So maybe I'll turn it over to you. I think that, obviously the dollar is a great starting point. There's obviously been talks about other types of fiat currencies, for example, the euro, the Japanese yuan, or however you pronounce that, as well as the British pound, So there's a lot of different avenues here that we could potentially go down, but it doesn't seem, or I guess it is maybe a little bit interesting to see the timing, right? Where we had Charles be vocal about the fact that USDC, is asking for a lot. And then again, they're kind of violating some of the Cardano community's core beliefs. And then all of a sudden we get this brand new venture being funded by IOG to focus solely on stablecoins. So Trim, I know that you're working at IOG now. Is there anything that you've maybe heard internally, or just maybe what are your thoughts surrounding the fact that IOG is kicking off their own venture surrounding stablecoins?
So I honestly, I don't know much more than sort of the public with regards to this. So if you didn't know, IOG is split into these sort of separate tribes that are working on, specific things. So I work for a tribe called partner chains or side chains, that is, focused on this sort of next step in the scalability narrative. I know that there is a stablecoin tribe. I've read the same things that you have basically, and the thing that I would maybe add to that is, as you say, the tokenization of assets as a sort of principle is pretty important, especially when it comes to interoperability, especially Web 2 interoperability. Going sort of integrating with more traditional sectors. So, as you say, stable coins like a euro coin or like a yen coin or something like that would be great. I don't know if anything like that is in the works, but something like that could be very, very useful. I do know that the state of Wyoming put out this request for proposal, which is just basically an ask that a governmental body can do, or company can do, to have people pitch their approach to things. So the state of Wyoming added a request for proposal for a stable coin, from what I understand, and I do think that IOG has some sort of talks with these guys. Charles is based out of Wyoming. So I know that there is some sort of thing going on there, but they're probably by not the only ones doing this, right? But there is a market outside of just US dollar pegged stable coins specifically, for global purposes. There are these sort of smaller niche markets, maybe other assets like gold and silver and other commodities, right? That you can tokenize, could also be considered a stable coin, because the price of the token isn't fluctuating sort of outside of the underlying asset in this case.
That is an interesting point that you raised there. I know that there's also been a lot of chatter surrounding tokenization of real world assets, which again, that was kind of what you're hitting on. I know that we saw Endmaker tokenizing, I think it was 20 diamonds during the Dubai summit, right? And then we also have a protocol like Twin, which I actually covered earlier today on one of my updates, which is aiming to tokenize gold 1-to-1. So you can essentially have gold locked up somewhere around the world. And as long as you own one of their gold NFTs or gold backed NFTs, that gives you the rights to basically claim or own that particular piece of gold. So I do think that, these types of tokenization platforms are going to be the future moving forward. Imagine tokenizing, for example, a car, a watch, some of these everyday assets or items that we all have and own, right? I just think that, again, there's a huge market for that, and stable coins I think can also kind of play a piece into that. Obviously, allowing for people to have a quote unquote store of value, right? So I think that there's a lot here that we can jump into. Let's kind of maybe keep the conversation moving forward. I know that we've got
Yeah,
quite the
yeah, for sure.
agenda, but I do think that this was a great piece to touch on in terms of stable coins. And then again, the potential that we have here with USDC and their new bridging standard. Let's take a couple of comments here from the community. We've got Lee tuning in. I want to say big thank you, Lee, for the super chat there at $9.99. Yo, Dap, can we get some Jesus coin love up in here? God bless. Yeah, no, Jesus coin, I've seen them. I think they're a meme. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. I personally have not invested in them. I'd always tell people here, make sure you do your own due diligence, do your own due research, but they've definitely been popping up on my timeline. And so, yeah, I just want to say thank you, Lee, for tuning in. Definitely appreciate the super chat there. We've got Pippo here, who's been a huge supporter of the channel. I think there are some chains with USDC that have a lower TVL than Cardano. So it's not necessarily a given that USDC will bring huge liquidity. That is a fair point. I do think that with what Cardano does have going on, though, it does kind of pose a different equation. So we're already seeing Cardano's TVL trending up and to the right, as opposed to a lot of other networks where their TVL has been flat or stagnant. So I think that this shows that we have interest in Cardano, and we also have builders. So if you add the interest already and the builders, and then you add some form of stablecoin, at least that's super highly liquid and adopted, I do think that it'll be a positive outcome for Cardano. But that is a fair point that you raised there, Pippo, that we just won't know until we actually have it on the network. I did see a couple of other comments here coming in from Isaro Vargas about USDM, excuse me, and the fact that we should potentially wait to get that online first and see exactly how that performs before we come to any conclusions. We got another comment here coming in from Patrick. What happened to USDA backed by the dollar 1-to-1? If you missed this update here, Patrick, a couple of months back, I want to say maybe about 4 or 5 months back now, we did hear from the official Anson's team, who's supposed to be providing this fiat-backed stablecoin, that due to regulatory hurdles, they had the entire platform ready to launch. But because, again, there hasn't been that clarity, especially within the US, that they were going to put things on pause. So it hasn't been canceled, but it is currently paused. And again, I do believe that they've got the underlying framework ready to launch once we get that clarity within the United States. Let's see here. We got some other comments coming in from Fun Pants. I've been mining Pi for 10 months. I bet it's a scam. Definitely be careful. I was mining Pi for a while there. I think they're just kind of like taking just data from your phone. You didn't have to actually do anything. But that has been like waiting to launch for I don't know how long. So again, Fun Pants, definitely do be careful. And, obviously make sure that you're aware of who you're giving your data to. All right, we've got ESCO. AI will be the turning point in the next bull market. Again, a lot of bullishness here surrounding the AI market. We've got Mega Dutcher tuning in. What is up, Nathan? God bless you. And then we've got Asaro as well. I'm just kind of laughing. So I'm not sure what Asaro was laughing at, whether that's the data comments or maybe the Jesus Coin comments there as well. Anywho, let's keep the show moving on. So now that we've touched on CZ, Grayscale, Circle, let's jump into Bitcoin very briefly. So, over the past couple of months, obviously Bitcoin has been trending up. The bears are still somewhat in the market, which I'm highly surprised, right? I would definitely think that given the higher highs in the higher lows, that that would be a huge kind of indicator for people looking at the macro market. For example, somebody like El Capo, is still betting on Bitcoin falling back down to, I believe, somewhere around 15 to 12K. I think that is not going to happen, especially with the bullishness that we've seen. Again, just as a brief example, right? The fact that Bitcoin only dropped like 1,000 points after CZ, one of the biggest faces and one of the most recognized names in the space, stepped down from, the largest exchange. And then the price shot back up within less than 24 hours. So I personally don't think that we're going to see that big of a pullback. Again, not necessarily a price focused channel, but we could potentially see Bitcoin maybe retracing. We are super extended when you're looking at some of the big indicators, for example, like the RSI, et cetera. And so I would definitely say that, a retracement is in the cards. When that'll come, I'm not sure. But I definitely don't see us falling all the way back down to 15 to 12K and then pumping all the way back up to where we are now. Now, granted, nobody here has a crystal ball. Of course, invest at your own risk, but that is just my personal thesis. So Trim, definitely not asking you to make any price predictions by any means, but like, what is your sentiment just overall surrounding Bitcoin and just the blockchain and crypto space within the last couple of months?
I mean, yeah, look, to me, the price goes up, the price goes down. It's the way of the markets. To me, it's really not about the price, right? But I'm mostly here for the technology. For the community is great and everything, and it's an amazing space to be, and there's so much innovation. There's so much things, really cool things going on and stuff to do that it really keeps me going, literally regardless of price action. With Bitcoin, though, the halving event is coming. What is it? Early mid-year next year. There are a couple of other things. The Bitcoin ETF. Does it get approved? Does it get rejected? Sort of what's going on there. There's a lot of uncertainty leading up to the halving, and although the markets don't repeat, they do tend to rhyme to an extent. So I've seen predictions that things might go down again, have a retracement, sort of a even a proper bottom. I do think that we've been fairly low for a while. So I'm not sure sort of how low that would be, or if it would even happen, right? But I'm definitely not feeling super bullish at the moment. I don't think everything's going to go up and to the right.
I totally appreciate the honesty there. And that's, I think, part of it, right? I think when the herd, quote unquote, has one particular mindset, the market always seems to go against it. And I kind of felt the very same exact way when I came in late 2021 at the kind of top of the market and people were screaming for 100K. Obviously, that never happened. And then everybody just kind of got caught in a trap and had to write it all the way back down or sell at a loss. So I definitely do appreciate your perspective. As you mentioned, we still have almost 6 to 7 months until the Bitcoin halving. And historically, there appears to always be some sort of black swan event, quote unquote, or some sort of correction type event that happens before we actually get that final takeoff into the brand new bull market. So again, not financial advice here, but definitely wanted to share that. Now, I released a video not too long ago as well, talking about the fact that Jim Cramer had urged people to sell their Bitcoin at 17,000, which was obviously the worst time to sell. That was like right around this particular range here. And of course, since then, we've seen Bitcoin, let's see here, increase all the way to 126%. So a 2x there for anybody that would have basically been patient enough to hold through that era. Now, granted, when you look back at the charts, you don't necessarily feel the emotions, but I remember, feeling like, man, this thing just keeps on going down, down, and down, and it doesn't stop. And that was around the time that the FTX debacle had really kind of kicked off. So wanted to touch on that there. If I do just quickly jump over, go ahead,
there
Jim.
is a there is a concept of the inverse Kramer index, which is whatever Jim Cramer talks about on Mad Money. Do the opposite. That's typically the sentiment. So if he tells you to do something, do the opposite, and you'll pretty often you'll do good. So if he tells you to sell, maybe buy. So in this particular case with Bitcoin, that was maybe a good point of entry instead of exit, like he proposed.
Well, if we're gonna follow that logic, I think he's now bullish again. So it might be time.
Yeah,
it might be
I
time
mean,
to.
who knows, right? But it is a bit of a funny meme.
Right. No, I definitely agree. I got a really good comment here that I enjoy here coming in from Esco. The tech is definitely the most important thing. And yes, I couldn't agree with you more. And that's really what I try to do here on the channel is focus more on the tech and just the real aspects as to why we're here in the first place. I know Charles has mentioned this before, and that's exactly why he also doesn't touch on the price action, is because he believes that is a lagging indicator. You build it and they will come. If you focus solely on the price action without building anything, well, that's pointless, right? Because there's never going to be anybody that comes in because you don't actually have anything built. There's no utility and there's no use cases. But with a platform like Cardano, the community, and just the leader that we have in Charles, IOG, the Cardano Foundation, and Emerco, I definitely think that we're on the right path, and a tech-based approach will definitely pay dividends in the long run. Now, I want to just quickly touch on a couple more comments here. We've got Dre, win Lambo. Hopefully in 2025, we'll all have our own Lambos. But I don't know. You tell me. We've got Ritos coming in, I believe, also from Australia. So really gathering a huge Australian community here. Again, shout out to Ritos, always showing up in my comments and showing some love on the channel. Now, that said, let's take a couple more comments. We've got Esco again. We need a product that will benefit non-crypto users. Yeah, I think that's what we really need at this point is some sort of bridge, right, between the Web3 world and the Web2 world to show them that, hey, this is something that can be utilized, but it's not necessarily for tech heads or the geeks that are super early adopters like yourselves and I here watching and just keeping up with everything going on in the space.
And that is ultimately what it's all about, right? It's not, crypto isn't for crypto's sake. Crypto is, a stepping stone to achieve exactly that. Something that can literally benefit everyone. Even though you're not aware of what's going on underneath the hood, you're still benefiting from it. That's kind of the idea, right?
Yeah. And I think platforms, for example, like Meld, which are trying to literally meld, the bridge between Web 2 and Web 3, have really kind of taken this, and that's kind of been their mantra. But a really good point there coming in from Esco. We've got Lee again. Y'all ignore comments in here. Lee, we do not. I just gave you a nice shout out for the super chat. And again, thank you for blessing us there with that chat. So moving into the next one, Mega Dutcher. Reverse Kramer has an accuracy of around 60 to 70%. So if we're going to take that, then maybe it is time to just be careful if we do see a pump that we could potentially have some sort of retracement here in the near future. We've got Lee. Thank you, bro. You are welcome. Eric backing us up here. We always make sure to answer comments. We've got another Eric as well tuning in here from the Cornucopias community. What is up, Fareed? Congratulations on your award. Very well deserved. Eric, I definitely do appreciate it. Unfortunately, I was not able to catch up with you in person this year at NFTLV, but hopefully we can catch up at the next one. All right, we've got Pippo touching on some of these other use cases that may not necessarily be for crypto users, stating that World Mobile's a product that can benefit a lot of people. I definitely do agree. The World Mobile team is aiming to connect for anybody who hasn't heard of them. They're definitely one that I think can have a huge real-world impact and indirectly onboard people into a platform that is built strictly off of blockchain technology. So really great point that you make there as well. All right, let me just quickly dive into this article. I'm just going to highlight this here. We've kind of already touched on Bitcoin, but there's a article that actually touches on somebody who's providing their insight that's from the Cardano community that I want to quickly touch on as well. So this is coming in from Plan B, who's I believe been in this space for a couple of cycles now, and he states, enjoy sub 40K Bitcoin. He stresses that the average price of Bitcoin from 2024 could potentially be all the way up to 100K. So scrolling down, he states, Bitcoin is destined to go much higher than its recent 18-month highs, and Plan B believes that the time is taking to increase BTC's exposure, or excuse me, that the time is ticking to increase exposure below 40,000. So for anybody who's looking to scoop up Bitcoin while it's relatively cheap, even though it is up 120%, he believes that the time is now. Now, whether the market should expect lower levels from here, he does not agree, saying that he simply expects an average of Bitcoin will reach the price of 100,000 between the years of 2024 and 2028, following Bitcoin's next halving cycle. He's got a lot of really nice drawings up here. I do want to jump into Twitter here. This is his account here, Plan B, where he talks about the stock to flow model. And some of these areas noted in the blue dots are where Bitcoin holders are in the red or in a loss, right? Whereas some of the other areas, excuse me there for that, where we have the green and then jumping into the yellow and the red are when the Bitcoin holders are actually in profit. So as you guys can see, we now are at a point where 87%, which is quite a big number, right, of Bitcoin holders are now in profit. So I don't know what you think about that, Trim, but I think that that again is drawing a lot of that bullish sentiment, because for anybody who's holding Bitcoin, again, 87%, that's a great portion of the majority are now in profit. So there's a reason as to why they do feel bullish. And of course, one of the biggest voices has been Michael Saylor, who was kind of laughed at as he was continuing to buy Bitcoin as the price, was trickling down. And then most notably has now been in profit, I believe making over, if I'm not mistaken, $1 billion since Bitcoin has crossed over the 30K threshold. So I wanted to quickly touch on that there. Any thoughts before I jump into the very last piece here surrounding the price of Bitcoin?
Yeah, I do think, it's important to keep in mind that, when people are in profit, they might take profit, right? Which might drive the price down. They might also hold. So, there's no way of predicting or knowing the future, but, it is important to keep in mind that, the fact that a lot of people are in profit is not automatically an indicator that things will keep going up and to the right? So just be careful out there.
Yeah, that's a really great point that you made. Because they are in profit, they're more likely to potentially realize those profits. Now, granted, if they've been keeping up with the space for, any amount of years, and if they've ridden out the bear market, then I would think that they would know that right now is just the very beginning, and that, yeah, you may want to take profits, but you definitely want to make sure to continue to hold to the majority of your Bitcoin, especially as the halving nears. So moving into the next piece here, I do want to quickly touch on this article, which comes from Coinpedia. So many of you are familiar with MELD. They're aiming to, as I mentioned before, bridge the gap between Web 2 and Web 3, utilizing their lending and borrowing protocol. I believe that Trimmer was actually a contributor to the MELD protocol, so I'll give him a chance to speak here. But I want to just quickly highlight some commentary coming in from Ken Oling, who is going to be their founder. So Ken Oling, the founder and CEO of MELD, is anticipating a significant surge in Bitcoin prices, labeling it a panic level rally. So I think what Ken is aiming at here is the fact that a lot of people are speculating about the upcoming ETF, and that this could just be a short-term rally with a retrace in the near future. Now, he's also asked about his long-term vision, which he provides an interesting estimate. So the CEO highlighted the imminent decision by the SEC on January 24th regarding the spot Bitcoin ETF, which we touched on earlier. Oling also stressed the positive track record of BlackRock, a key player in the ETF space, and expressed confidence in their application's approval, citing the potential boost it could bring to Bitcoin prices. Now, towards the very bottom, he addresses the likelihood of an approval, stating that he has a high confidence level, estimating it north of 97 to 98%. I believe that there's some sort of statistic about Bitcoin and the amount of the amount of ETFs that they get approved, with some sort of ratio, I think above like 500 to 1, basically stating for every 500 that have approved, that they only have one that is rejected. So the fact that they're at this point, I think again, really shows that we are probably going to get one. And if we hopefully get one, we also get all of the other 12 to 13 others that are also lined up. Now, last but not least, Ken Oling projected that the approval would trigger a surge in Bitcoin prices, potentially reaching 75,000 to 80,000, setting up an all-time high. Looking ahead, presented with a bold forecast of Bitcoin exceeding 300K by September of 2025. So that is quite some bullish estimate there. Again, Trim, I know that you've worked with the team. Any maybe just kind of thoughts here? Again, we won't hold you to it if you don't want to.
Yeah, that is a very bullish sentiment. I don't necessarily share that view, but it's an interesting prediction. I'll give him that.
Yeah, we'll keep it at that. We got some comments here. Bitcoin, I don't know if that was done on purpose or not, is okay, but Cardano is the future. We've also got another piece of commentary coming in from Frankfurt. I'd love to see you in the Cardano GPT chat Discord. I will definitely go ahead and check that out, Girolamo, and I'll see if I can maybe release a video talking about exactly everything that they're building there. All right, that will take us through all the updates so far when it comes to the macro news and Bitcoin. As always, we definitely do appreciate you guys joining us here. If you guys have found this content to be valuable, make sure to go ahead and share it and hit that thumbs up. Trim, I want to thank you. If you do have to run, I will not fault you at all. Definitely make sure to go ahead and let me know. We are crossing right now the 1 hour threshold.
Yeah, I'm happy to stick around for a bit longer if you
perfect.
If you're up for it.
Yeah, no. Okay, so this next piece is pretty juicy here. We're going to touch on Ethereum, and I really want to get your way in here because, again, you're a little bit more technical than I am. And then we're going to jump into some Cardano news updates, and then, of course, we'll wrap up with some Q&A towards the very end from the community. So over the last 2 to 3 weeks, I would say, there's been a lot of FUD and just a lot more talk about Ethereum. So we're going to maybe kick this off here with some of the interesting pieces with respect to allegations of fraud. So the post Ethereum, there's a member. Let me just make sure here. It's Steven. There it is. Steven Nureyev, a former Ethereum advisor, is alleging that co-founders of Ethereum, which include Vitalik and Joseph Lubin, engaged in fraudulent activities more egregious than those seen in the FTX fraud case. Now, FTX, I think, was one of the biggest ones that we've seen so far. I think upwards of like $7 to $8 billion taken. Some of that has been recouped. But the fact that this person here, who I believe has some really close ties to Ethereum, right? Obviously with Vitalik and Joseph, making these accusations is really, really bold. Now, I believe that he did release some recordings, but you had to pay for that, which I found to be really, really odd, right? So if you have really clear evidence, you shouldn't be trying to monetize that. You should just give it forward for what it is and, hopefully help people out by bringing forth the truth. So I didn't necessarily understand that piece, but this was just one of the biggest things that came forth about Ethereum about 2 to 3 weeks ago. Now, since then, there has been a couple of clips circulating around online. So let me see if I can find one here, and I'm going to go ahead and just kind of play it here in just a minute. But I want to just kind of lay a little bit of context. So in this clip here that I'm going to play in just a minute, Vitalik is talking about what they call plasma, and he's comparing that to rollups or zero knowledge rollups in terms of technology. Now, what he's basically saying is that utilizing the EVM model, it's very complex to build out something like Plasma, which would work better utilizing the UTXO model, which Bitcoin has adopted, as well as Cardano. Now, that said, Trim, I want to maybe turn it over to you for your initial thoughts, and then I want to actually play the clip for the community to hear. And then there's a follow-up clip that I also want to play about Vitalik touching on the UTXO model, which has also drawn some comments from Charles Hoskinson himself.
Yeah, for sure. So someone actually tagged me in a discussion. I believe it was a week or so back on X about this plasma thing. I hadn't heard about it. I didn't know what it was, but from what I could gauge from the conversation and a little bit of reading, it seems like it's an attempt from Ethereum to do something like state channels, right? So a parallel chain, or sort of a parallel way of processing transactions that you can do sort of off chain or in a separate environment that you can then sort of settle back on mainnet when you're sort of done with it. So it's a very light version of something like a layer 2 or a roll up or something. So it is in essence pretty similar to Hydra from what I understood. And the problem with state channels is in EVM, right? The way that tokens work in EVM is that you have a single smart contract that is the token, and on that smart contract you have like a literal list of addresses and their balances. in a single place. And if you're trying to take something like that and put it into a state channel, how do you make sure that they're I don't know. It's so many problems to solve there. Whereas something like Hydra that works with the UTXO model that we have in Cardano, it makes a lot of sense, because the way that works is you take a set of UTXOs, you put them in a smart contract and sort of lock them there, spin up the Hydra head where you can do all kinds of things. And the sort of primary thing that happens within Hydra is the redistribution of the UTXOs. At the end of that, you can settle the end state, the final state of the UTXOs, and put that back on mainnet, and sort of take the UTXOs that you locked in the first place, and then distribute them according to sort of what you agreed on in the Hydra head. So it makes a lot of sense, because in the UTXO model, you have this local state. There's nothing on main chain that's ever going to be sort of interfering with this set of UTXOs that you're bringing in there. So it makes a lot of sense, and you have a lot of applications that you can build with this, because you have really good benefits like instant settlements, and you can have zero fees, and there's a lot of really cool things you can do with Hydra. What it seems to me like they're doing here is basically trying to mimic something like that, because state channels don't really work with a global state kind of token model like the EVM is. So they're trying to replicate something like an UTXO model that works with this kind of system, to use this scalability that you get from this, which is kind of them trying to reinvent Hydra how many years after the fact, right? Which is, I don't know. To me, it seems a little bit crazy, and I'm sure you have the clip from the interview with Vitalik, where he talks about the UTXO model and why the EVM doesn't have that. And that was the craziest part to me. Like, basically the decision of why they're not using UTXO there, because he thought it was hard, and he explains this idea of building a wallet where you want to create a transaction, and then the transaction costs something, so you have to add like UTXO for gas, and then the addition of that UTXO changes the nature of the transaction, so it costs a little bit more. And then his idea was to add another UTXO on top with gas for the gas, basically, which is just, I don't know. To me, it seems like he just wasn't able to work with UTXO. Which is why he decided to go a completely different route with this accounting style model, which, I don't know. It seems like he's finally sort of coming around to some of the drawbacks of this decision, and sort of the benefits of a UTXO model sort of to begin with. And there are a lot of chains that have various versions of UTXO, like the UTXO model in Cardano isn't the only one, right? And it's not like it's Cardano and Bitcoin. There are a lot of chains that have this similar sort of spin on this, that isn't an account style thing like EVM. So it's kind of interesting that they're sort of figuring out the benefits of this technology, sort of what is it, 6-7 years after the fact. It's I don't know. I'm very happy that they're sort of coming around to it, right?
Yeah, I agree with you. And I mean, sometimes you have to learn things the hard way, right? I think it's partly a culmination of looking to launch first, which I mentioned in prior videos. First movers advantage. Yes, you get access to the market share, but second movers or late movers advantage, you're able to capitalize off of any mistakes or any potholes that the first mover may have fell into, right? So I think the biggest and clearest example that I've seen so far to date of this is just Cardano's liquid staking model, right? When you compare that to ETH's proof of work, adoption early on, and then their shift over to proof of stake, even with their transition to proof of stake, it's still not as fluid as Cardano's. And so that was just one of the biggest examples that I've seen. And then, of course, now with Vitalik, right, the guy at the helm of Ethereum, utilizing the EVM model and the account-based model, kind of talking about how, maybe UTXO would have been better, is just another clear example that, yes, sometimes it is better to take your time and do things the right way the first time, as opposed to just getting to the market right away in order to capture that market share. So I did release a fully dedicated video breaking down all the advantages of a late mover's advantage. If you guys want to check that out, it is on the channel. Without any further ado, let's maybe just quickly listen in to what exactly Vitalik said, and then we'll kind of pick back up. And there is a second clip as well that I do want to jump into. So let me share. And if you could just confirm, Trim, that you actually can hear this audio, that would be great.
There's something to be done about staking centralization, right? Like the status quo of the different pools and solo staking being hard and all of those things is not really healthy. And there's I think a big opportunity to do some redesign to the staking system that really alleviates some of those issues. Like in a UTXO payment system, right, where basically a UTXO unspent transaction output, like it's like a virtual coin where if you pay me money, then I get a new coin, and then if I pay you money, I have to like break up one of my coins into two coins that are smaller, and then I get back one of the coins, and then you get a totally new coin that contains just the money you need. Like the nice thing about that UTXO approach is when you receive a payment, you get a totally new thing. None of your existing things can be changed without your consent. A balance-based system, right, where you just like track how much money everyone has, does not have that property, because in a balance-based system, you can change my balance without my consent by increasing it, right? And so like it feels like a really sort of obvious detail, right? Like, yes, of course you could send me money without my consent, but like we don't care because sending me money is good. But well, for me.
I love how that clip ends there. What's really interesting is like this guy knows what he's talking about, and that's what blows me away. So I'm just like, if you understood this, and it's not like I assume he's had this revelation before, right? It's not like he just woke up yesterday and just had this revelation that like UTXO has all these other benefits. I'm just like, why wasn't this done the first time? And so Charles has actually left some commentary here, and I do want to jump into this, right? But before we jump into that, let's roll into the next clip first, and then we're going to jump back. So Trim, I'm going to need for you to just confirm again that the audio does sound okay. I do see Eric confirming that it does sound okay, but let me just double check here.
Ironically, despite
there it is,
kind of rebelling against UTXO as at the beginning, I think once privacy enters the picture, you do sort of go somewhat back in that direction.
Was replacing UTXOs with balances your idea?
It was, there were definitely like specific bad outcomes of UTXOs that really motivated that choice. Like I wrote this Bitcoin wallet, and I remember having to write this pretty crazy code to deal with the case where like you set the transaction, you need to pay fees, but then in order to pay the fees, you add one more UTXO, but then that increases the size of the transaction, and then you have to pay more fees and add more UTXOs. And like in the worst case, it's a while loop. And like I kind of got traumatized by some of those experiences, and I'm like, screw it, transactions are like.
That's the kind of thing we're working on nowadays at ECC. We're making UTXO-based Zcash wallets, and so I know exactly where you're coming from on that. Oh, anyway, sorry, I distracted you. I was just curious about this history question. Was it Vitalik's idea to replace UTXOs with balances? One of those big, impactful changes. It's fun to see all the downstream influences on all the other people that came after. But anyway, you were saying in the privacy context, UTXOs have some advantages, and you're giving the example of some of your money being tainted, but it doesn't rub off on the other bills in your wallet.
Right.
So really interesting there. No, go ahead and jump on in the trend.
I mean, so many things. This pause after the summary, oh man, to me, and this might be a hot take, and to keep in mind that these are my opinions, right, and nothing else, but it does seem to me like maybe the choice of moving away from UTXO and into this sort of account-based model was a maybe slightly hastily made choice, right? Like, because it's convenient. It's very sort of object oriented. So if you ever programmed in Java, right, or one of these object based programming languages, then account based programming feels very familiar. Like you have an object, like in an ERC20 contract, and you're updating its state in that contract, right? Whereas something like in UTXO seems a little bit odd to work with. But it seems that, maybe he made the choice of an account-based thing a little bit hastily, and it's kind of this sunk cost thing, right? When you've made a choice, you've started down a path, then sort of backtracking and retracing steps to fix that thing and then implementing it in a different way and then sort of progressing after that becomes untenable. And especially, in Ethereum's case, it's absolutely impossible to go back now, right? I know for a fact that Cardano, in the early days of IOG, I wasn't around in IOG at that point, but I've heard it from Charles's videos that they did a lot of work that they had to go back and completely redo, right? Like the I believe it was some of the node software that they made, some of these, the designs that they made, they had to actually go back and completely reprogram the thing from scratch, once or twice at least, which, kind of shows the dedication to doing things right. Whereas, it seems maybe in this case, this choice of moving away from UTXOs based on, building a Bitcoin wallet once and having trouble managing, the gas fees, it seems, trying a little bit rushed, to me. So this is one of the reasons why I'm so hard into the Cardano ecosystem, is because there are all of these things that are actually addressing this issue, like deterministic fees and all of these things, and doing things in the right way, right? Actually taking the time to go back, fix mistakes, roll forward again, and taking this research-based formal methods approach is just complete. It's a completely different ball game, right?
It really is. And again, the community gets a lot of flack for it, but I don't think that they understand some of the impacts that rushing and making hasty decisions can have, right? And even in that clip that I just played, the guy towards the very end made a comment that, like, I wasn't sure if he was saying that in a snarky way or not, but he was like, it's interesting to see the downstream impacts that these decisions have had, right? Obviously, Charles ended up, kind of distancing himself from Vitalik, building out on Cardano. There was another founder as well. I don't remember his name, but ended up going to build out Polkadot, right? So there was some commentary just kind of talking about, imagine if Vitalik, Charles, and the guy who founded Polkadot had all really kind of stuck together, right? We would have like this mega chain, which would have all of the benefits, everything, but it probably would not actually be at the stage of adoption that Ethereum is. And again, that's, I think, just due to the nature of making sure that you take a research-based approach with, yes, it does take longer, but hopefully you don't have as many issues down the line where you're trying to roll things back or trying to fix problems because of things that were rushed out early on. So I think you hit it right on the head. Sometimes I kind of feel bad for Vitalik. When I watch some of these clips, I'm just like, man, this guy's got to carry a lot of responsibility for this, but then also he gets a lot of commentary at him for his decisions. And so I don't know, it's just a very tough spot to be in. Nonetheless, let's jump into some of these comments here. So this was posted, this video was posted by Stake with Pride. Shout out to him. He was at the Rare Evo conference. I was able to hang out with him. His tweet game is like on 100. Every time that Stake with Pride posts something, it always seems to go viral. And even to the point where Charles is engaging with it. So Charles retweeted this and basically said, no worries, Ethereum 3 will have this all sorted out. Obviously, a little shot there at the Ethereum community, right? Given the fact that they've, made so many upgrades and they've had to roll things back, and they just struggled to literally launch a fully functioning platform. Now, we've got a comment coming in right after that from Crypto Tech, basically asking Charles to take the higher road. And so after that comment, we've got Charles responding, not fueling hostility, but I'm truly at a loss that Cardano can never be mentioned as an innovative ecosystem over on Team Ethereum. What's also interesting is that he never actually spells out Vitalik's name. He's always just says E or V, referring to Ethereum or Vitalik. And so he continues on and says, V or Vitalik is rediscovering what we've been working on for almost a decade. And it's like a new revelation. It's extraordinary that we never get a shout out. So again, it sounds like Charles had this vision so early on, but potentially him and Vitalik couldn't see eye to eye. Therefore, they kind of parted and went their separate ways. Obviously, Ethereum is the largest or the second largest chain only to Bitcoin. I believe it's the largest in terms of smart contracting or smart contract capable platforms. And then we've got other up and coming networks, for example, like Cardano. So Charles, yes, didn't get to get a big piece of that market share, but the approach that he's taking, again, has already paid dividends with the likes of Cardano staking, and then also the adoption of this brand new service model that we're going to be seeing, hopefully, right, with the Midnight Network being the first ever partner chain. So I think that Cardano, in the fact that they're taking that slow approach, will definitely pay off. And we're just starting to see some people potentially regretting decisions that they made early on. Now, there's additional commentary here, but maybe I turn it back over to you, Trim. Do you think that the Ethereum community owes us some sort of shout out, or at least some sort of recognition, given what has been built here on Cardano?
I mean, yeah. Do they owe us anything? I don't know. They have chosen to go a different direction, or sort of take a different approach at every sort of step of the way that they could. And the staking model in Ethereum is, when I first read about it, I thought it was a joke, right? And this comes from a very biased point of view, but I think that Ouroboros is more or less solving how staking should be done, right? Completely liquid, completely, non-custodial staking, no sort of staked ADA token or whatever. It's just simple. Like, it's there in your wallet, you delegate, and then you can still use your ADA for whatever it is you want, which is, critical, especially with all of the, governance and all of these other sort of things that you can do with these tokens. And just the staking model sort of, almost by definition requiring centralization is such a strange way of doing it, right? Where you have to have at least more ETH than normal people are able to have to set up a stake pool, and you're not able to withdraw it freely. You're not able to do anything with it. So you have these protocols like the what is it, Lido, that has this staked ETH token. It's just such a weird sort of ecosystem, sort of trying to patch together the inefficiencies of the staking system that they have, which I think is just so strange. And it is, as you say, or as Charles pointed out, like there is such a barrier to appreciating any of the innovation that's been happening elsewhere, right? And it's a big space. There's a lot of stuff going on. I'm sure that a lot of people just aren't aware of this, right? Because there is not too much sort of cross-contamination between people that are way into the ETH space and sort of all of the benefits that, for example, Cardano staking has. So, I'm sure most people just aren't aware, but, I'm 100% certain that someone like Vitalik is aware. So, he could take, some of these innovations and actually use them, right? And accredit, Cardano for making these innovations, or, at least acknowledging some of the benefits or anything really at all. But there is this, very, very strong barrier, which I'm not sure if it's tribalism or what it actually is, but it does seem, very, it's kind of ridiculous after a certain point, right? That none of these innovations are acknowledged. None of these things are sort of, spoken about in even a neutral way. Like they're typically just not spoken about at all.
Yeah, I think you really kind of hit there on something. So I kind of think of the tribalism as one aspect of it. Obviously, backholders are incentivized to, promote and talk about whatever ecosystem that they're a part of. But looking at it from the founder's perspective, right, it's almost kind of like a competition from siblings, right? So I'm not sure if you have any siblings. I do. I'm very competitive, and so are my siblings. And this is what that kind of reminds me of, the little brother maybe trying to show off the older brother trying to assert his dominance. And it's like a battle between the builders and these visionaries. And it's a race to see whose solution is best and whose solution is the one that gets the adoption, right? And so I can kind of understand a little bit of that hostility, but just want to just quickly follow up here again. Stake with Pride, shout out, right?
Yeah.
this tweet here hit the nail on the head. Like these are the ecosystems, and instead of welcoming each other with open arms, we're firing shots at each other every day in, day out, saying, hey, our chain can do this better than yours. Our chain is faster. Our chain is more decentralized, etc. But like, what kind of product can we build if we were all to come together? So again, maybe in some sort of alternate dimension, we'll have this nice blockchain where everybody plays friendly, but in the world that we live in, that is unfortunately not the case.
And I really like, the sort of guns pointing inwards within each ecosystem as well, like protocols combating each other within the same chain. Like, we're all in it together, guys. It's we should try and have this mindset of, if one of us wins, everyone wins, right? Be it on the blockchain level, on an application level within the blockchain. If it's, the whole space is so small and so young still. It's not, Cardano versus Ethereum versus Solana. It's, blockchain versus, CBDCs, right? Or centralization versus, pushing power to the edges and trying to, introduce these technologies into real world applications. So that's the actual fight that we should focus on, right? Not the, this guy versus that, or this chain versus that.
That's a really good point that you make. And I actually did have a piece about CBDCs on the agenda until the computer crashed and threw us off course here. But there was Senator Warren, a video of her circulating, basically talking about, how we need CBDCs. For anybody who's not aware, that's stands for a central bank digital currency, right? And to me, it makes no sense. I'm like, if we already have Bitcoin, we've got platforms like Ethereum, we've got the ability to launch, tokens native to these blockchains. We don't need any sort of additional currency controlled and managed by the governments, right? Like that's what we have with fiat currency, and that's what we're trying to run away from. And so to kind of have just heard that particular clip really kind of opened up my eyes as to where these people stand, and really, again, why we need the decentralization, the security, the immutability, and the transparency of blockchain is to run away from these big controlling entities and the grip that they have on us average folks, right? So really great point that you make there. And again, I think we just have to get over the tribalism, but it's going to take time for the space to mature. And again, the fight is not within each other's blockchain. It's again, like you mentioned, with the bigger entities, the governments, the central banks, these people that are trying to suppress and keep these financial tools for themselves, right? So I'm definitely here for the long run, and I definitely believe in the tech. And I also released a video about that yesterday, right? About why we have to believe in the tech, not necessarily the price action and all these other things. But if you really are here for the tech and all the opportunities that it brings, you're here for the right reason. So any closing comments there, Tim, before we jump into Cardano updates and then shut down today's stream?
I mean, no, I think the people that are here probably know, more than enough about CBDCs. It's I do think that, because I've been watching a lot of Coin Bureau's coverage of CBDCs, and at some point, I kind of stopped tuning into those because I kind of get it, right? It's the point has been driven home. Updates are, one thing, but it's it started becoming sort of a little bit too much of a big baddie. I'm not sure if it is actually that bad, but then it could be that. That's kind of the problem, right? Like it is a little bit too much power in central hands, with possibly no oversight at all. And in the case where in the interview with Elizabeth Warren, it could be global reach, right? Like the countries that depend on the US dollar or even have that as their sort of native currency could be forced into the CBDC system, where what if the United States Central Bank is able to freeze assets for people living in Argentina? Is that sort of the direction we want to go? But yeah, anyway, I'm happy to move into more Cardano focused stuff.
Yeah, no. Interesting comment here coming in from David Studio Malacca. Less CBDC, more CBD. Everybody needs to chill out. We've got Pippo here. Ethereum is all about that first mover advantage. A lot of value in that particular ecosystem. Acknowledging innovation anywhere else in the space is dangerous for them. That's really a good point as well, right? Because they've got that market share. If Vitalik was to say, hey, Cardano's doing something well, hey, maybe people in Ethereum start to, number one, FUD Vitalik, but then number two, maybe some of them do cross the bridge and come over and check out what's going on. Now, what I love about the service layer approach is that indirectly, right, you could still have people building on an EVM network or on Ethereum, utilizing data coming from a partner that is actually being backed by the Cardano network or by some other sort of network, right? So
I'm having so much fun seeing you guys right in the chat.
Yeah, no, thank you for everybody who's engaging there. For anybody watching this as a part of the replay, feel free to go ahead and comment down your thoughts below. It's always a pleasure for myself to come back and read comments there as well. Trim, if you aren't signed into YouTube, definitely make sure to go ahead and sign in through StreamYard. You can actually go ahead and respond to comments live in real time as well. Yeah, so you can also engage with them. Okay, looks like Trim actually dropped off there. Hopefully he jumps back on. Let's jump into Cardano-based updates here. So let me bring this up. What we're going to do first is take a look at the top 10 platforms or the top 10 gainers within the Cardano ecosystem. So coming in at number one, looks like you had some technical difficulties there.
Yeah, no, pro tip, don't try to log in the, browser window that you're streaming from.
Yeah, so anywho, let's keep things moving. Top 10 gainers coming in at number one, we've got Revuto. They're launching a subscription platform. We've got Ardana. They've left the ecosystem. Now, granted, it's not much liquidity coming into either of those two tokens. We've got Rejuve coming in from the Singularity Net ecosystem. We've got Ncoins at number 4, right? And a lot of price appreciation from here. This volume does look to be pretty substantial. And this team is actually getting to launch on the mainnet on November 30th. So really interesting to see, how people kind of buy the news, or excuse me, buy the rumor, sell the news? You know what I mean? But they're definitely buying into the hype before the actual platform launches. So shout out to Vlad, who's also a contributor to ZK Fold, bringing zero knowledge rollups to Cardano with Stanislav as well. Now, right behind them at number 5, we've got the Muesli Swap token, a decent amount of liquidity or volume coming into their platform. And then I'm not necessarily seeing too many other big projects here. We've got Paribus, which is going to be focusing on lending and borrowing in the synthetic space as well. Taking a look very quickly at some of the biggest losers. Let's see if we've got any big standouts here. Surprisingly, we've got the Teddy Swap token. This actually just launched. This is a DEX, and they're going to be bringing stable swaps as well as, I believe, options trading in the near future. But they just launched on the main net about 2 days ago. So their token does appear to be down following their LBE. But I did want to quickly touch on the top gainers and losers. Now, moving over into this next piece here, I did release a video about this as well. We've got an ongoing proposal vote for the MinSwap protocol. If you guys missed this news piece, they basically utilize all of the liquidity pool ADA to vote within Project Catalyst funding round number 10. And they're now having a vote to decide exactly how to distribute those assets. So as it stands right now, let's see here. We've got over 765 votes utilizing the Min token or the governance token for the platform. And then moving along, we've got some additional updates here surrounding Indigo, who continues to have a vote, I believe, until the 26th of November, surrounding increasing the collateral ratio needed to mint IUSD. So we did see the IUSD asset DPEG. A lot of people were basically minting it and then selling it on secondary marketplaces in order to leverage or get into other assets. And so in order to reduce the risk to the protocol as well as everyday holders of IUSD, because again, it should always be pegged to $1, they're going to be aiming to raise that collateral value. So in terms of the effect that will have, hopefully that will then force people to put more ADA down in order to mint, to where you don't get a lot of people minting with such a thin collateral ratio. Moving along, we've also got an update coming in here from OrcFax, which has officially launched the announcement of their Pioneer campaign. So if you guys are looking to earn some of the FACT token, you can definitely do so by promoting the project. And so they're calling all writers, bloggers, educators, content creators, Discord degens, tweet stormers, designers, ape whisperers and meme gurus. I think they literally got everybody within the crypto and Web3 space there. So if you guys are looking to earn the FACT token, you can go ahead and join their Zeely. I believe they'll have daily quests you can perform. And then at the very end, they'll be tallying up the biggest contributors and then distributing some of their FACT token, which is broken down here, to their community who's participating as a part of that effort. Now, last but not least here, in terms of Cardano updates, we did get the 1,000 air node milestone being reached by the World Mobile Token. So this team is showing that they are contributing big time. They 5x'd the amount of air nodes deployed this year alone compared to last year. So last year we were only able to get 200 online. This year we've got over 1,000. This was actually made about a week ago. And since then they've deployed an additional 50 air nodes. So this team is on track to potentially hit 1,100 air nodes deployed by the end of this year, really showing that their sharing economy and their sharing community is really beginning to take off. So I commend Mickey. I was able to sit down with him very recently in Dubai. I've got a 45-minute interview dropping really soon. The team is currently reviewing that, but hopefully we can get that out here ASAP for you guys to literally hear from the man himself about his mission and what the actual War Mobile team is doing in terms of achieving their global mission. Trim, anything that you maybe want to comment on? I know there's quite a bit there. I need to take a breather here, but I'll turn it over to you for any thoughts about Cardano.
Yeah, that was quick, man. That was very, very efficient. Actually, I wanted to touch on, actually one of the earliest things that you said, sort of in the Cardano section, about the ability for the Cardano ecosystem to leverage and sort of export the stake pool, decentralization and security of the network, which is one of the biggest, most unique selling points of Cardano as an ecosystem, is the completely unparalleled decentralization, just straight up. Because with all of these stake pool operators contributing to the block production of the network, there's no network that has sort of this level or degree of decentralization, meaning, as many nodes participating in block production, or, as little centralization as this. Because one of these things, and I can't remember where I heard this the first time, but there is this idea of the 2 pizza rule, where if you can feed all of the validators in your network with 2 pizzas, then you're not decentralized. And I believe the stake pool set is what is it, 3,000 or something now, with more than 1,000 with ample block production, right? So it's just completely blowing that number out of the water. And sure, there are some sort of multi-pool operators and everything, but it's still a vast network of very engaged individuals. And that's sort of the second takeaway there, that a lot of these guys, they actually really know what they're doing. And being able to export this and sort of make value happen based on this is something that I'm very passionate about. And you mentioned, Furry, that I recently joined IOG, and I'm actually working in the partner chains tribe, and this is sort of one of the things that I'm pretty engaged with, sort of in the day-to-day, this ability for partner chains to leverage the stake pool operators, and for either projects to spin up partner chains, for maybe other chains to be able to leverage this as well. It's going to be so beneficial for everyone, and it's something that I think is. I saw this Crypto Crow breakdown as well of sort of the midnight thing, and sort of this Charles video with the Cardano service layer and everything. And to me, it was like, well, yeah, it's cool that you're hyped about this, but this is what's happening. For me, it was kind of this is just the state of things. But for a lot of people, this isn't obvious, right? And it is kind of mind-boggling, and it really is. It is something that's worth getting very excited about. I think this whole sort of partner chains initiative, and all of the value that it can bring, to the whole ecosystem, because that's the point. Like, everyone's going to benefit from this. People on Cardano, and the stake pool operators, and the people that want to have specific services provided to them, like dApps that need privatization, or some sort of some of these shielded features from the Midnight chain. Maybe there are scalability solutions coming. Maybe there's some other things coming in this partner chain sort of universe that can expand the operations of dApps. Imagine if your DEX has access to these things on other chains. Imagine the kind of gaming protocols that you can have, and at the end of the day, you're able to bring in a lot more use cases from not only sort of cannibalizing from the Web3 space, which is honestly a lot of blockchain development these days is just sort of trying to take market share from each other, but also opening up for a lot of other use cases, right? I really love that one of the biggest projects on Cardano is, World Mobile Token, which is, basically an infrastructure protocol, right? It's building up this telecom network. Igon is another one. AI with SingularityNet. There's a lot of these really cool projects that aren't blockchain for blockchain's sake. They're using blockchain for really interesting things, and I think that's sort of where the power of partner chains is really going to sort of shine through, right? And then really sort of excel the ecosystem into the future. So sorry, kind of plugging my my area there a little bit, but it's something that I'm very happy to see sort of people talk a little bit about.
Yeah, and no need to apologize whatsoever. That's exactly why you're here, is to give us that insight, because again, you're literally the boots on the ground, right? So you have firsthand experience that a lot of people, including myself, don't have. So I just want to say thank you for that. And I was trying to really show, again, the strength that we have here in terms of insights when it comes to the distribution of stake pool operators on Cardano. So you are correct. We've got over 2,900 nearing now on 3,000 SPOs in the community. But I want to also just go ahead and quickly touch on some of these decentralization indexes here, which include the Nakamoto coefficient and the MAV, or the minimum attack vector. So if I go ahead and pull this back up here, again, the goal of this partner chain approach is for the Cardano community, SPOs included, right, as well as delegators, because it's a win-win, right? The SPOs are running the infrastructure. They get the block rewards by securing other services, including Midnight as one of those services. But the delegators also receive a portion of that, right? Just like with traditional ADA staking rewards. So when we're dealing with partner chains, it's not just something that benefits SPOs, but that benefit trickles down to the delegators as well. So that's why it's always huge to make sure to delegate to a stake pool. And so that said, I want to just quickly touch on the Nakamoto coefficient here. This basically is measuring how decentralized a particular network is and exactly how many node operators have to be, what is the word that I'm looking for here? Compromised. Perfect. Yep. That was literally took it out of my mouth. Compromised in order to take advantage of the network. And so when we look at this particular coefficient here for Cardano, as you guys can see there, we've been ranging anywhere between, let's see here, 25 to 28 at the very highest. And if we were to basically take a look at a longer time frame, I believe at one point we had even hit 30. Now, to put this into perspective, I've got this other website here taking a look at some of the other networks, which also compares their Nakamoto coefficient, or minimum attack vector. So as you guys can see here, their current values range from 8. We've got Avalanche at 24, Binance, or the BNB network, at 8, Ethereum at 2, which I'm starting to question if that's really true, but that's very scary to think of, right?
I mean, they're probably counting, the Lido pools and what is it, Rocket Pool or something, the next biggest one. Those two put together are probably over 50%.
Which is crazy, right? When you think about somebody getting access to that, they then basically can just do whatever they want on the network and potentially, propagate really bad information and take advantage of users' funds. Anywho, moving along, Polygon. We've got 4. Mina, I've never heard of it. 88. I'm not really sure how valid that is, but it's good to see that they're doing well. We've got Thorchain 23, Solana 24, which is very surprising given the amount of issues they've had with their personal network. And then we've got Sui with 14, and then Celestia at 5. So again, we can count here 2, which again aren't necessarily big blockchains that I've familiarized myself with, but we've got Mina and Thorchain, which are above Cardano. Other than that, Cardano appears to be beating everybody when it comes to decentralization. So again, I'm not sure how many users are actually utilizing these other two networks, but they do at least seem to be secure in terms of decentralization. But that's the point that Charles was really trying to make, right? Was that this is our biggest asset, and we have to be able to export this through something, for example, like partner chain. So Trim, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just about to say I've looked into Mina a little bit. It's a ZK based chain. They have some interesting things going on, but yeah, it would kind of make sense that they would have a high Nakamoto coefficient, because their whole idea is to have the whole blockchain basically as a recursive snark. So it's a constant size blockchain of, I think it's 22 kilobytes or something. So it's super duper small, right? So you can have the whole blockchain in your browser, because every new block is just a snapshot of the previous block, and new transactions in a zero knowledge proof that has a fixed size. So that's kind of the point of it. So you can have these things all over the place. Which is, I assume, how they sort of reach such a high number.
Yeah, really cool to hear. Again, I've not heard of them, but I like the fact that they're taking somewhat of like a light approach with a super small blockchain that can be kind of plugged in and played in, utilized anywhere on the go. Now, let's
DC Spark is working with them, I think, for some of their tech, I think, as Alexander mentions.
Yeah, I did see that. So thank you for the heads up there, Alexander. Now we are coming up on almost 2 hours. Again, I've had a blast. Time has flown by, Trim. This has really been an enjoyable experience. For the community tuning in and watching, we definitely do appreciate you guys. If you guys have found value out of this, make sure to smash that like, share it to get the word out there. But I think what we're going to do is just kind of wind things down and maybe just turn it over to the community for some Q&A. So I did see some questions earlier, but if you guys have any questions or topics that you guys want Trim and I to kind of weigh in on, feel free to go ahead and drop those down in the chat, and then we're going to go ahead and jump into those here in just a minute. Now, while those questions begin to come in, we've got Chuck LeMaine asking, what's the best ADA hardware wallet? Anything you can stake with, or would that defeat the purpose? Now, I do want to quickly shout out Gaiki Uwema here. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. Chuck, you can stake with the hardware wallet, for example, like Ledger, and that's actually what I also recommended. I actually own a couple of Ledgers. I've got the Nano and the X as well, and they recently integrated Cardano staking support through Ledger Live. So it's quite a process, but it is one of the best ways to keep custody and do it in a safe and secure manner. And of course, there's other wallets, for example, like Trezor. And there's also even a new wallet that's now kind of been on my radar, which their name is escaping me now, Tangem. So they've also got a hardware wallet. Now, granted, I'm not sure if Trezor or Tangem both support staking. Thing? Yes. So
yeah, because they have a card and a ring and thing. Like, it looks pretty cool. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, not a problem. This is the Q&A. This is what this is all about. What I really like about the Tangem, and I just found this out, is it doesn't need to be charged or doesn't need to actually have any batteries in it. So it uses, I forget the name of it. I think it's called NFC. It's some sort of like spectrum or something like that that's built into the smartphones. And you just tap the ring directly on the smartphone, and it actually is able to communicate that way. So it doesn't use Bluetooth or anything like that. It uses this different kind of connection, which doesn't require for you to actually have some sort of device charged. I thought you would have to like charge the ring, intermittently or whenever you're trying to use it, but that's not the case. So unlike, for example, something like a Ledger, where you have to kind of plug it into your computer, with a Tangem, you're able to just tap the card on the phone or tap your ring directly on your smartphone in order to utilize the actual hardware wallet. So Trim, any hardware wallets that you maybe want to shout out or that you personally use?
I don't use hardware wallets. It's a whole video for itself, but I don't trust them. It's the sort of the bottom line. There's a couple of different reasons why, but you can make the argument that you shouldn't trust software, light wallets or anything like that as well. But it's I don't know. I haven't had the use for them quite yet. I do some I don't have that many wallets that I manage, and I manage to keep the the keys to the ones that I do have pretty safe. So I haven't had the use for it, honestly. And especially with the whole Ledger sort of debacle that was earlier this summer, you probably remember that. Just before the Claymates collaboration was supposed to be announced, and that they had this whole thing with the what was it, the trusted backup, whatever it was. Like, I don't know, it doesn't sit quite right with me, unfortunately. And there's a lot of cases where hardware sort of things, like cars, for example, have been tampered with in a way that is supposed to be basically undetectable by audits and stuff. So I don't know, it doesn't sit quite right with me. But anyway, those are my thoughts.
I appreciate the honesty. For somebody who is so deep in the space, that's really surprising for me to hear. I definitely do understand with the concerns that happened with the quote unquote recovery feature that was supposed to be launched with Ledger. Obviously, the community, spoke out so loudly that they basically said, "Hey, we're going to just kind of push this to the side." I don't know if the collaboration with Claymates ever actually came about, but that was like super poor timing because, again, Clay, I think, has been getting a lot of exposure, not just with hardware wallets, but even with EVM networks, right? So I think that a collaboration with the Sandbox, obviously they've got really good connections with Snoop Dogg and his son. So that was really unfortunate timing. But just to kind of go back to your point there, I mean, I'm very surprised to hear that you have some of those reservations about hardware wallets. So as a follow-up to you, do you just keep everything in a hot wallet? Like, what do you do to make sure that your crypto assets are secure?
So yeah, I have basically two sort of approaches. I have a full node wallet, dateless, basically, for kind of storing stuff, and then I have a couple of NFT wallets, or what I call degen wallets, with smaller amounts that I'm putting into DeFi, doing all kinds of things with. I have a bunch of NFTs there, and yeah, that I'm sort of managing on the daily. And it's not the end of the world if things go wrong with that wallet or those wallets, right? But I do keep the keys. I manage those pretty securely, and yeah, I would be very happy to actually go into the details of why I'm skeptical about hardware wallets, and in a separate time, because it's a much broader topic.
Yeah, no, I'd be more than happy to have you back on again. I think with the amount of knowledge that you bring to the space, it'd be really good to kind of hear your points in like your angle as to why you take the approach and stance that you do. So I definitely appreciate that. Let's jump into some of the community questions. We've definitely got a lot of them lining up now. Before we jump into that, though, we've got Mr. and I assume this is Mr. here, Uwima, saying, "I wonder how many people lost money through Cardano light wallets compared to what is called MetaMask." So this actually brings up a really great point. I definitely think that this was maybe just kind of like a shot at Ethereum and the fact that their wallets are easily drained just due to how smart contracts are able to interact with wallets, as opposed to Cardano, where there's a completely different approach and there's different signatures and things like that have to take place. But I don't think that it's even comparable, right? So very fair point, very fair thing to note here. I think at the end of the day, it's keeping track of your seed phrases and making sure that you don't have any malware associated with any of the browsers or extensions that you're utilizing in terms of your hot wallet. But this also opens up another door here, where I know there's been a lot of hacks within Discords taking place very recently. The last one that we saw was with the Twin protocol. I know even at one point the Mel Discord had fallen. The Indigo Discord had also had some issues with people taking over these Discords and then providing links to Ethereum-based websites, right? Where if you do connect your wallet, it's then automatically drained. So that is, I think, another big benefit of the Cardano community, where we don't have that ability to take advantage of people and their wallets. So again, I know we talked about staking, we talked about the advantages of just the UTXO model, but then even with how smart contracts interact with wallets, I think is another hidden gem when it comes to Cardano. So I did want to note that there. And again, Mr. Uema, want to thank you for the nice and quick comment there. Let's take a couple more comments here. We've got PC in performance. Thank you very much for the congratulations there. we've got Alexander with a quick follow-up directly aimed at Trim. So Trim, how's IOG treating you? Any alpha you want to give for the partner chains we haven't heard of yet? So he did give us a little sneak peek there, but anything else that you want to maybe add?
Yeah, I mean, the trading is great. It's it is a company like any other. So don't get me wrong, it is a place of work, and it has its good and bad sides, like any place. But to me, it feels kind of like home, right? It's where I'm supposed to be, basically. It's I feel like I'm able to contribute, to the extent that I'm able, because I have a lot of experience sort of in the space now, and I bring a lot of outside perspective, which is very, very beneficial, right? So it's your impression of IOG really depends on sort of how engaged you are in the ecosystem, especially if you've tried to build, and especially when you've tried to build. So if you try to build in 2021, you will have a very, very different impression of IOG than if you're trying to do stuff now. So there's so much that has sort of changed, and it is a really, really good place to be. There's so many really brilliant people, lots of good initiative, and there's just so much innovation already done, right? So much of it, hundreds of research papers, lots of stuff being made, and all of these things sort of feed into each other. So it's really it's sort of a big land to sort of get a sense of sort of where do I find all the things and sort of put them together in the right way. But so much of this is really well thought out, planned, and the really unique thing that I think you'll find in absolutely no other place is, for the most part, you guys know about as much as I do, right? Which is completely bonkers, right? So, because Charles, he has a vision, and he's laid out that vision, both in all of the research that has been done, but also in his videos, like his AMAs, his explanations. He's been talking about all of the stuff that we're doing now for years, right? Like, you can go back and look at it. Like, some of these things have sort of changed names or terminology a little bit. Yeah, like the idea of the Cardano service layer through the partner chains, like just the partner chains, right? It's still sort of in a transition from side chains to partner chains, which is just a better naming convention for them, I think. But this idea of the service layer, Charles referred to it as something else before, but he's been talking about it for years. And the research paper that sort of underlies a lot of this, like the Minotaur consensus protocol and this stuff, was written years ago, right? So it's literally such a rich foundation to sort of keep building on, right? And that's really amazing to me. It's I really don't think you'll find that anywhere else on earth.
Yeah, I just want to extend a congratulations to you. I know you were doing a little bit of freelancing, and when you first told me that you got this job, I was like, yeah, this is exactly where he belongs. Again, the amount of technical knowledge that you have and contributions, and just even the experience that you've had, right, working with Iagon, Meld, and now being able to bring all of that, and work with IOG, who's literally leading and at the very bleeding edge of all this technology, I think is really instrumental. So I definitely think that this is a really great opportunity for you. And I'm happy to hear that you enjoy it so far. And I definitely look forward to picking your brain, especially as we get more information surrounding, partner chains, bridging, and, all these different things that we're waiting on in terms of IOG fork. So we've got additional people tuning in there. We've got Alfred tuning in. We've got Didi tuning in. Again, Alexander, great question regarding Trim. We've got Dre. Trim is next level. He definitely is. He definitely is. That's why you want to go ahead and follow him on X.
Cheers, mate.
All right. Let's go ahead and take a couple more questions here. We've got Thomas Lean. Sneck, bull or bear? Ooh, this is a tough one, Trim. I'm coming to you in just a second, but I just tried the drink about 4 or 5 days ago. I released a video about the Sneck energy drink. The drink was really good. It was amazing. It actually surprised me. Now, I got it shipped from another content creator that I met at a local event, and it came all the way from California. Now, this person was nice enough to send me 2 cans. One of them actually busted in the mail. So I got a package with like blue stuff all over it, and it was drenched in SNEC, but the other can was still good, so I was able to drink that. I say all that to say this project is more than a meme coin, Thomas. And yes, they started off as a meme, but we just saw Goofy Crisp literally leave his full-time job in order to take SNEC as a full-time opportunity moving forward. And so that said, I definitely do think that SNEC will benefit when the bull market comes around. Where they are now is extremely tough to say. I know that we've seen a decent rally here just a couple of days ago. Whether or not that continues to go, again, I can't make that decision for you, but I can definitely say that this team is made up of builders. They're looking to ship hundreds of cases of their product very soon. And then on top of that, they've provided some of these different bridges that allow for people to migrate their Ethereum over into Cardano, etc. And so again, I think that SNEC is definitely one to keep an eye on. They're bringing utility. And while they may have started off as a meme token, they're really definitely branching out to become more than just that. So Trim, let's bring you back up here. Looks like you've got your good old friend there, Hosky. How's everything going?
So yeah, I don't know if this sort of tells the story. I kind of have my the meme coin of my life settled, but SNEC, I don't know, mixed feelings. I'm a huge energy drink lover. I've tried to cut back on coffee, but the sort of end result of that is replacing it with energy drinks. So I'm really looking forward to trying that out if I ever get the chance to. I'm cautious about SNEC just because of the LenFi thing, like, adding SNEC as collateral. I do think that is a potentially kind of risky thing. If people collateralize SNEC and, borrow a lot of assets and, sort of over leverage themselves, there might be, a big liquidation event or something like that, which puts a lot of sort of selling pressure on the SNEC coin, right? So for that reason, I'm cautious about it, but it's I kind of like the memes, the long S's in all of the tweets, and I've definitely seen them around, right? So, but I don't hold any SNEC token myself.
Thanks for the transparency there, and yeah, I think their community and their brand is their biggest asset. They stick together and they roll deep. Whenever I release any sort of SNEC video or SNEC content, they show up every single video. So kudos to them. And Thomas, I assume you're part of the SNEC crew. So big shout out to you and thank you for the question there. We've got Mega Dutcher. Thoughts on FLAC Finance? It's India-based lending and borrowing, potentially a huge market. Yeah, I know India is definitely beginning to open up more and more to crypto. Obviously, it's bigger than just India, right? Anybody with an internet connection that can connect to the protocol can utilize it from anywhere around the world. And one thing that really stood out to me about the FLAC team is the fact that I believe the team that's behind Cardano Scan is actually also contributing to the development of FLAC. So Cardano Scan has been my go-to explorer. Let me maybe just clarify. It's either Cardano Scan or C Explorer, but it's one of the explorers is actually behind also the development of FLAC Finance. So lending and borrowing, I think, is a huge piece here within the Cardano ecosystem. Obviously, we have one of the first movers, LendFi, with the majority of the market share, like we talked about earlier. We've also got Liquid. But short of them two, I think there's a really big opportunity for FLAC, right? If they're able to get everything up and running very quickly. Now, one key thing that I think has been advantageous to them is that they've already, I think, put forth some testing when it comes to mobile. And so they've had an incentivized testnet just for the regular web browser interface, but they've also had an incentivized testnet to launch on mobile as well. So imagine being on the go, being able to, lock in a loan, provide liquidity, do all these different things while you're on the run. I think that's a really big piece of the market that's still relatively available, right? If you take, for example, a look at the wallet space, Vesper has really tapped into that and they're like undisturbed. They rule the mobile wallet space. I know MinSwap, I think, has a mobile wallet, and there's a few others like not Yoroi, Jira Wallet. But when I normally speak to people about wallets, they focus or they highlight Vesper. Now, Vesper has gone all in, right? In the sense that like they don't have a browser-based wallet. So like all of their time is spent developing solely on mobile, which has really given them that big advantage. And I think that if Flag can maybe tap into that space, that they could also have a lot of great benefits moving forward. So Trim, any thoughts here for Mega Dutcher?
So I personally, I haven't, really looked at Flag. I do know that the Indian market is, I think they have somewhat a clear crypto stance, which is both for good and bad. I think their their tax rate for crypto returns is 30%, which is pretty high, but at least it's a number, right? So they're taking at least a consistent approach to it, which I think is really good. India is a massive market, right? So if that's sort of what they're offering and doing, I'm sure that's gonna work out great for them.
Yeah, really cool. Again, if anybody wants to check out more about Flag Finance, you can head over to the official website, which is available at flag.finance. So Mega Dutcher, thank you for that. Hopefully you've got a little bit of clarity and some insights from us there on that. Okay, moving over into the next question here. We've got one coming in from Pippo. So Pippo is asking about NMaker. He thinks that they've got some big potential, but he's not necessarily sure about their governance token. So yes, I definitely think NMaker's got a ton of potential. If you take a look at their recent engagement and just collaborations, their latest one again was with a platform called Diamonds, where they brought on 20 tokenized diamonds to Cardano. Those sold out, I believe, within like 48 hours, right? Really showing a lot of demand. And these weren't cheap. These are like high grade diamonds. On top of that, during the Cardano Summit, they announced a partnership to bring tokenized real world assets on chain with Emergo, right? So Emergo is one of the big three, one of the founding three for Cardano. And the fact that they've got access to big markets is big, but then for them to partner up with NMaker to do that, I think brings more credibility to Patrick and his entire team. Now, to add to that as well, they, I think, provide over 40% of the NFTs minted on Cardano, right? So when you look at, anybody who's building and they want to do it at a low cost, they can utilize the NMaker platform. So in terms of use cases, utility, partnerships, etc., they are definitely on the right track. In terms of the utility token, maybe that's a different aspect of it. And Trim, I maybe want to kind of hear your thoughts. I know that they've partnered up with Genius Yield to provide staking of their NMaker token. In terms of utility, I believe that, of course, number one is going to be governance. I'm not too sure what the trust score there is in your comment there, Pippo, but I do know that you will also be able to get discounts when you utilize the actual platform as well, right? So if you hold the NMaker token, you are able to get benefits on the actual platform. But short of that, I'm not sure if there's anything else that I'm potentially missing. But what are your thoughts surrounding NMaker there, Trim?
I've used them a couple of times. I think they're a great project. Like they kind of blew my mind once with there was, I can't remember exactly which yes, I think it was the Genius Yield NFTs that they dropped after the ISPO. So if you participated for so long, you got diamond hands and whatever. The actual NFT drop, I think, was facilitated by NMaker, and I was really blown away because I delegated to the ISPO with my Daedalus wallet, and I was like, oh god, I'm not going to be able to claim these tokens. But NMaker actually had a thing where you could put in your wallet, you could get an address that you could send some data to from that wallet, so you didn't have to have a browser wallet connector. So you can actually just send some data there, get the tokens back, and with the NFT, which I thought was great because then you can actually use it with Daedalus. The token itself, I don't really know much about it. I'm not exactly sure what if it has utility in terms of better fees for projects that want to use NMaker for token mint and distributions. I think that's could be a great opportunity. I remember reading somewhere because 40% of NFTs, but I think it's like somewhere around 80% of assets in general or something. It's a crazy number in terms of how involved they actually are with minting of assets.
Yeah, that's really huge to hear. And again, so I think Pippo, NMaker is not going anywhere. with some of the partnerships they've got, the integrations they've already made, and just the amount of market share they have, I think they're here to stay. But again, when it comes to picking up their governance token, that is a decision you'll have to make on your own. So hopefully, again, you found this particular insight and quick chat about what NMaker is doing to be helpful. Let's move along. Let's see here. We've got just a lot coming in. So a quick aside here from Mega Dutcher: Ledger is closed source, Trezor is not. All hardware wallets are not the same. So definitely thank you for that. I think that's in response to some of the commentary that we had earlier talking about your concerns with hardware wallets. We've got, let's see here, Eric showing some support. So this has been a fabulous live stream. Driving now, just wanted to say thank you guys so much. Eric, we thank you as well. It was really nice to meet you. Yeah, drive safe for sure. It was nice to meet you in Vegas. And I want to say again, thank you for the gift that you were nice enough to bring me after driving, I think, 18 plus hours. So that is the Cardano community there, man. In a nutshell, Eric drove, I think, again, 18 plus hours, hundreds of miles, and was nice enough to bring myself, Rob, Greg from Cornucopias, and even Mickey from World Mobile a gift at the actual event. So thank you for that. Let's jump back into some more of these questions. Let's see here. PNC performance. Vesper is nice. I definitely agree. Vesper plus Dex Hunter equals win for Cardano. That is actually not a bad combo there. Now, granted, I have heard some concerns lately, though, about the fact that Dex Hunter could potentially be like centralizing or, rerouting traffic as they see fit, which is something that I personally need to look into a little bit more, right? Because again, it's kind of like a 51% kind of thing where if they now begin to get the majority of the traffic as opposed to people going to the actual DEXs themselves, they could potentially hold the market or the DEXs in some sort of like a headlock, right? So, Trim, I'm not sure if you want to maybe weigh in on that, but that is something that I saw recently in a comment of mine that has kind of spurred me to go in and actually see, could this be possible, and what is this actually all about?
I mean, I haven't personally used Dex Hunter. I don't quite see the hype or the reason for it, because it's not that hard to find the best price yourself. And well, at least for me, I'm not doing trades of hundreds of thousands of ADA at a time. But it's cool with these aggregators. I was actually sort of brainstorming how to do an actual sort of DEX optimization aggregator in August, where literally just I started the work 2 days before, like bam, 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 3 announcements or something of these aggregators coming out. So it's interesting to see these projects coming live. Personally, I don't know. I like certain aspects of some DEXs. I saw actually a question a little bit further down that is sort of, yes, exactly that one. So how many DEXs do we need on Cardano, and are the differences in them really that big? I do think that there are some sort of quantitative or qualitative differences, I suppose. Well, both in a way, between some of them, and then there are smaller differences between the rest, right? So something like mutually swap is pretty different from the rest because it's a pure order book model, right? I do think maybe they went with a different approach for their V2 or something, or maybe I'm remembering wrong there, but that is a little bit different from the other ones, right? It's not a pure AMM style DEX. The rest of them are somewhat similar, I think. If you're thinking about MinSwap, Wing Riders, Sunday Swap, and Vi Finance, for example, they're reasonably similar in many aspects, and somewhat different in other aspects. I personally, from a UX perspective, I quite like Vi Finance because they have this stakeless yield farming thing where you just supply liquidity and then you don't have to stake the tokens afterwards or anything like that, which is, from a UX perspective, pretty different, but, it still sort of relies on basically the same thing underneath, right? So they have, all of these other guys, they have batchers and they have, these sort of trade-offs, but there are minor differences, and there's some innovation going on underneath the board as well that I think is worth looking into all of them.
Yeah, and just to kind of piggyback off you there, I think they all bring different value propositions, right? So, for example, MinSwap, I think not only do they do the just old-fashioned, swaps, which we come to know and love. They've got their LBE platform to securely and safely launch tokens. They've got their own governance portal. You take a look, for example, at Wi-Fi. They've got NFT staking, which, as you just mentioned there, brings a really unique opportunity. And then you take a look at, for example, MusiSwap, and they've got the DEX aggregator. So it's like every platform does something differently. You take a look at Wing Riders, they've got their WRLP or their Launchpad. And so, yeah, I definitely think that, the wider the variety, the better. And then, of course, when you're looking to make a big trade, because there's so much fragmented liquidity, if you utilize some sort of aggregator, then you do get the best price. So I think it's inevitable. We're so mature that this is like one of the best ways right now to come in as an entrant into the market is through a DEX. And of course, we just saw, for example, a platform like TeddySwap, which is also bringing stable swaps, etc. So I think everybody has something different to offer. But nonetheless, it is good to see that we're thriving with respect to that. So as we get ready to close things down here, again, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. We'll maybe just take one or two more questions. We've got Thomas again asking if we believe in the Ape Society. This team is definitely one that I am bullish on. Now, granted, I just have a small allocation. I own a cabin, not an ape. And I got that a while back, and it's actually in a really nice position. So I like that. Now, granted, they've put together a lot of additional features outside of their just regular NFT collection. So they've got like their Sana, they've got their custom nodes, they've got staking built on, and now they've even got Levy Finance, which allows for you to tap into the value of your NFTs by putting them up for collateral. So this team does a lot. And on top of that, Levy Finance V2 can also be used very similar to a platform like Lending Pool or Fluid Tokens. We can actually utilize and put up Cardano native assets or fungible tokens as collateral. So they are definitely way more than just an NFT project. A lot of projects are just PFP based and they don't really deliver a lot, or they're still delivering. But this team has delivered on multiple fronts, really showing that they know how to build. So yes, we're in a bear market. I think generally speaking, NFTs are not getting a lot of love. It's not just the Ape Society. It's like NFTs across the board. I think we're going to see a bull market with just regular fungible assets first before we see anything with the NFT space. If I am not mistaken, we saw NFTs booming after the decline in terms of the fungible tokens and just like the regular peak of Bitcoin, right? So the NFT boom was like early beginning of 2022 after like all the assets had already peaked and people were, I think, just kind of rotating and speculating a little bit more in some of those types of assets. So that's my take there. Anything you want to add there in terms of the Ape Society, Trim?
Yeah, no, I think I saw their booth in Rare Evo. I don't hold any sort of I don't hold many types of NFTs really. I dabbled a little bit with this guy, but it's not really my scene. I have tuned into a couple of the Ape Society Twitter Spaces, and sort of listen to the vibe just to sort of get a sense of the ecosystem. And they seem like pretty cool people. And the booth at Rare Evo, where with the actual physical paintings and everything, that was pretty cool. I don't know, it has something to it. But yeah, it's not really something that I'm sort of inclined to invest in.
Yeah, no, thank you for the insights there. We'll take one last comment here, and then I think we'll go ahead and close it up here. This last one is going to be coming in from MB. Since we're talking about DEXs, what's up with the horrible names? TeddySwap, SundaySwap, hard to convince normal people to take them seriously. I will actually say that I do think that we need to take ourselves more seriously before others from the outside will. And I think this is not just to DEXs, like this is just the entire space. I think there's a lot of meme, right? That's kind of like become the thing that's associated with crypto. Take a look at Pepe, Doge, Shiba Inu. Like this space is just, it's part of what it is. Now, when a protocol is building, I think it's something that they definitely have to evaluate. So I definitely don't blame you for asking this question. And if you take a look at AXO, right, they were called Maladex. And if you take a look at their mascot, like it was like this childish looking kind of thing, which it's cute. I get it. But like their target audience is institutional investors and professionals, right? So imagine them building a platform like they've built now, but with like the look and feel of, their previous mascot and their previous name. I just don't think they would have gotten the same level of respect. So I definitely agree with this comment, MB. I think that projects have to take themselves seriously first before we can expect anybody coming in from the outside to also take them seriously. So that's actually something that I would like to see more of, our projects rebranding. But keep in mind too, that like that is a big pivot. especially once you've got content out there, you've built up a community, you've put out, art, designs, graphics, you've built a website, like it takes a lot to pivot. So I would just
maybe
maybe
even a token, right?
Exactly. Exactly. So I would urge projects to think very hard about the name of their platforms, because again, we've seen successful platforms like Sushi Swap, et cetera, which go for like that super friendly, super cute theme. But that doesn't necessarily resonate with everybody, especially with people who are more serious coming into the space. So, Trim, I'll give you the last words here, and then I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up, man. Again, thank you.
Yeah. No, I think you're right on the point there, where I do think that a lot of these guys, or a lot of the projects, have primarily marketing in mind. And who are they marketing to, right? What is their audience? Well, it's the people that are, in most cases, it's the people that are already here, or that have some familiarity with similar things. So take, for example, Mutually Swap and Sunday Swap, right? The two first DEXs that launched, pretty similar sort of food themed thing, but it's also very easy to create a lot of marketing around, right? And if you compare that to sort of their predecessors, in other chains, like you have Uniswap, and as you say, Sushi Swap and Pancake Swap, and 1inch, and there's so many different kinds of weird names that just wouldn't work in the traditional world, right? So it's not like your JP Morgans or anything like that. There has been a couple of examples of sort of shifts away from that in different kinds of directions. Like the Wing Riders sort of theme seems to be a little bit more like gaming adjacent in a way, with this sort of mascot or superhero kind of thing. Meld, for example, and AXO, I feel are kind of in a bit of a different batch, right? Where it seems more sort of well designed and a little bit more professional, and sort of it's something different, right? But I think some of these projects have probably, they're looking for something that's snappy and available. Like you're looking for domain names within a certain length that is actually still open, and that you can acquire, and then sort of trying to build something around that the justification could be as sort of simple as that. So I do think that if we're starting to get more sort of outside adoption coming in, I don't know if we're going to change, honestly. Like, some of these changes for sure, if we're targeting institutional adoption and everything. But, if you're looking at the sort of user-friendly or sort of retail-targeted apps for similar things in the, traditional space, like, Robinhood is kind of a, regular person's stock investment thing, right? Or app. And it's like, okay, would you imagine Robinhood being an exchange between, like a business to business Wall Street kind of exchange name? No, not at all. Right. So I do think that it is kind of audience dependent, right? And you're kind of also defining the audience that you're reaching through your marketing.
Yep. And to that end, I think they just have to think about that first, right? So when you're writing your white paper, doing all these things, who are we trying to reach? Does this name resonate with them? So I can't add any more to that. Ladies and gentlemen, I think this will bring us here to the end of today's live stream. Big thank you to Trim. Congratulations again for joining the IOG team. I look forward to continuing to collaborate with you as the bull market rages on and as Cardano continues to grow and mature. That said, if you guys enjoyed any portion of today's live stream, again, please, for the algorithm, make sure to hit that like button. It really does make a difference. And it also helps to get this content out to other members within the growing Cardano community. If you guys want more content like this and collaborations like this with Trim and other guests on the channel, let me know down below and subscribe to Dapp Central for more. If you have any questions or comments, please go ahead and leave them down below. I will be checking the comments even after the live stream is over. And for anybody who's coming in as a part of the replay, let us know, what was the highlight for you here? What did you learn? What could we do potentially as creators to even make this experience more fun for you guys? Again, I just wanted to say thank you to Trim. And on that note, we will catch you all later. Take care, everybody. Again, thank you all for joining us. Bye-bye.